Hello everyone, this is Gökhan and we'll start in a couple of seconds. Just sit down, relax, take your coffee, and we'll be back with a lot of knowledge in a couple of seconds. Okay, good morning everyone. Bonjour, hello, welcome, guten tag, hola, buongiorno, salam, shalom. From everywhere, welcome to the second edition of Valo Fest. My name is Gökhan and I'll be your host for today. I'll be the guy who will be driving through the know before you goes, before the sessions. And I'm actually not alone here. I have a full team behind the stage, which will help us to make you as much as comfortable for the second edition of Valo Fest. This is unfortunately the last part of Valo Fest because we already had a tremendous part in APAC and in EMEA. So now I'm a little bit sad because this day is actually almost done. But hey, we still have a lot of speakers, a lot of content to share within Valo Fest. Why do we actually do Valo Fest? It's because we want to be the world's leading and most lovable digital workplace product suite on the Microsoft ecosystem or the platform. We want to be the world's leading, the best ones, helping you, boosting your business, helping you out in your organization, and actually be part of you and welcoming you all into the family. That's the reason why we always want to share our knowledge. We always want to share what we know with you so we can all together go to a better place. Before actually handing over to our speakers, I'd like to thank you, thank the partners, thank the customers, thank the community and delegates, everyone. Thank you for being so awesome. And thank you for helping us in the community. And I'm thanking all the MVPs and partners, or awesome 250 more partners, or 3 million customers. And the delegates, we had a tremendous amount of people registered to our event. Since day one, we had a lot of mails like, oh, wow, I want to come to your event. So thank you, grazie. And as we say in Finnish, kiitos. Kiitos to all of you to actually be here and to listening to this awesome event. Valo has almost close to 60 Valo experts on the team with 6 MVPs and a tremendous new people joined the team since the previous fest. And our mantra or goal is to help you and boost your business. So if you have any questions or you'd like to know something around our products, or simply you have an issue, you can always contact us. And the 6 MVPs and all other people at Valo or product owners, the marketing team will be all here to help you and boost your business no matter what. That's because we are one big family. We come from the community and we give everything to the community. And that's how we work basically. As I said, we are one big family, but we are one big family across the globe. So we have a house, a home in APAC, in Melbourne. Then we have a few more houses in EMEA, which is basically Finland and then Belgium, Poland, etc., etc. And then we have the North American people with Olivera, Juha, and Ilya. And those people are the key people behind Valo NA business, and you may contact them anytime, or they can contact you anytime with their email address, olivera@valointernet.com, juha@valointernet.com, and ilya@valointernet.com. And I also added the LinkedIn URL, so if you want to connect with them on LinkedIn, go ahead. Those people are the key persons in your region, always ready for you, always here to help. The most important slide, the know before you go. You have only one URL to remember if you want to see the agenda, if you want to have information about those speakers, or simply if you want to see how we did. Well, that's on valointernet.com/eventsall, ValoFest Digital Workplace Conference. Well, it is a long URL, I have to admit, but if you go on Google or on Bing and search for ValoFest, well, you should be directly redirected on that URL. We have a lot of social media channels, from Twitter to Facebook to LinkedIn. And please, and I highly encourage you to follow those Twitter handles, Facebook pages, LinkedIn pages, because all our marketing is going through those social media channels. If we have a new event, well, we will rely this on those media channels. If we have some new articles, new webinars, new products, updated products, new feature catalogs, well, they will be all shared on those social channels. And for ValoFest, well, as you can imagine, we have a ValoFest hashtag. And use that hashtag if you want to make a chance on winning swag. We give a lot of swag from APAC to EMEA to North America. If you post a picture, a slide, a feedback around ValoFest, with the hashtag ValoFest on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or marketing manager Tina will actually have a look on all the tweets and will choose randomly a few of them and send you over some swag. We have one rule: don't be shy, ask questions. We provide you ValoFest through Microsoft Teams with live events, and I know it is not the most easy platform to use for doing webinars or even events, because we miss that social, feeling to talk with the speakers or even talk to the moderators. You don't. The only way to talk to us or to talk to the speaker is asking questions. You have a Q&A, we have moderators, so any question is welcome. There is no stupid question. If you have a question and you want to have an answer, please go. Even if the speaker is not there anymore, the moderators will take the question and bring them to the speaker, and we'll make sure that you will get an answer to your question. Our goal is to boost your business and empower everyone in the organization for your distributed workplace. And that's our goal. Our aim is to welcome you in our family. You may be a customer or not. You may be a partner or not. You may simply be someone from the community or even an enthusiastic who wants to know about Valo. You're all welcome to our Valo family. We are a big family, and everyone is welcome to join that family and actually empower everyone's organization to achieve more. The gifts will be announced on our social media channels, hence the reason why I always said, try to follow us. And the slides, videos, and all of the materials will be shared and made available for delegates after the event. Please keep in mind that we maybe need 48 hours, but definitely those will be available and when they're available, they will be shared through our social media channels. The agenda, you can definitely take a screenshot from here, or you can go on the website and see the agenda. We will have a tremendous keynote from David. And honestly, when I've seen his bio on his website, I was like, wow, does David really come to our event to speak? I'm really looking forward to his keynote. But that's not all. We have Scott, Alysha, the Women in IT Network. We have Stephany, Ryan Fehr, and Juha closing the event. So all of those speakers are actually world-class speakers, and they're all part of ValoFest. I highly encourage you to stay until the end and watch everyone's session, because that's the way how you can learn and empower everyone in the organization. And last slide is we are honoring the Earth Day on April 22nd. For early registrants on our event, we have gifted some trees that you can plant through Reforest Action. This is something I personally care, because I think we deserve a better planet. And the only way of doing that is helping the nature by planting trees, as an example. So if you did register early, please use that code and plant some trees for our planets, because that planet is the only thing that we can leave to our children after we pass away, right? So that's really important. Okay, so thank you for listening for the 10 minutes. That's the only introduction. Before handing it over to David, My producer will take me off from the screen and will just play a short video while the keynote speaker is presenting. So my lovely producer, take me off, have a small break of a few seconds, refill your coffee, refill your tea, and let's start the show in a couple of minutes.
Valo, the world's most lovable digital workplace. Valo Intranet. Embrace internal communication and interaction with Valo's modern, visual, and social intranet. Valo Connect. Bring all your network digital workplace tools and software solutions into Microsoft Teams. Valo Ideas. Build your dream workplace by empowering your organization to ideate and co-innovate. Valo Teamwork. Organize your digital collaboration with easy access to digital teamwork tools through a single dashboard. Valo Extranet. Organize and manage your external users' access to various Microsoft 365 resources with a single dashboard. Valo. Fall in love with your digital workplace.
Okay, I think that was for the break, and I really hope that everyone could refill the coffee. But I think we have a second part of the break, so I'll let my producer play the second part of the break.
Countless hours, efforts made, patience tested, motivation sustained. It's all of us that stand by holding the same dream, to be there and support and unite as a team. We need to communicate, collaborate, and co-innovate. When we fall and our bodies ache, we need to consolidate. We identify our hurdles and continue to compete. With help from our team, we can recognize defeat. Acting as a catalyst, igniting our flame, we may fall, but remember, there's no shame. We find strength in numbers. We don't stand alone. We're a team that comes together, and that's ours to own.
Okay, now let me introduce you David. David is one of the world's leading business thinker. Forward-thinking ideas and best-selling books are helping leaders and teams to do their best work. He is the best-selling author of 4 books, and his TED Talk has been viewed over 2 million times. David, I officially declare you my God. How are you today?
I am fantastic. I'm not sure I'm quite at that God level, but thank you.
That's phenomenal. Like your TED Talk 2 million times. It is a dream of mine to be a TEDx talker. So I'm really looking forward to your session. I've read your bio, and honestly, it's a pleasure to have you on board. And I'm shaking because I'm talking to you. It's a real pleasure.
You are too kind. You are too kind. Thank you so much. Well, look, I'm excited to be here as well. I think a lot of people have figured out that wherever we're headed in the future, we're going to need increased collaboration tools. So I'm excited to be here as well. So I think the question that I get asked the most often out of any question over the last year, as this great work from home experiment has begun, I think the question I get asked the most often is, when are we going back to the office, right? When are we headed back to the office? When are things going to get back to normal? When do all of us get back together? And the best answer I have for people is we're not. At least not all of us, and not all of the time. So it's worth asking, as we move into a future that is almost unquestionably going to be a work from anywhere future. Some people are going to come back pretty quickly. There is a light at the end of the tunnel right now. I have no idea how long the tunnel is. I'll just be honest. It could still be miles and miles long, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And some people are going to be first back to office spaces. Others are going to be hesitant. And some have actually built a life for them that they really admire around this and are going to want to stay fairly remote from now on. So it's worth asking. It's worth using now as a time to practice, and worth asking the question, what makes for a thriving remote team? What are the things we need to know and need to be practicing now that will set us up for success in a work from anywhere world? And that's the thing I've been researching for a while now. I've been researching what makes for a thriving remote team and trying to figure out what the best research and best practice is that will help teams, whether they are fully co-located, partially or not, that'll help teams come together and work at a new level of collaboration. And the thing that I have learned over that time is that when you look at the research, when you survey all of the different research, it really comes down to three fundamental things around a team's culture and a team's form of collaboration. You know, there's that line in Anna Karenina, the Tolstoy novel, that all happy families are alike and every unhappy family is unhappy for its own reasons. Well, great teams kind of work the same way. It turns out they all have a few simple things in common. They're all alike in a few simple ways. And when we look at the research, we find three specific things that great, thriving remote teams have in common. They have a sense of shared understanding, a sense of shared identity, and a sense of psychological safety. And these are three different things, and I want to spend the time we have together going deep into what these terms mean. What does shared understanding mean? What does shared identity mean? What does psychological safety mean? And at the same time, I want to give you some practical things you can do to start building on each one of these things so that now, because now is the time to be practicing this, now we can build that thriving remote team that whatever the future of work has in store for us works for your team. So let's look at each one in turn very briefly. So shared understanding. Shared understanding is the extent to which members of a team have a commonly held perspective on the team's expertise, the assigned tasks, the context they're working in, and their preferences. And so I look at this shared understanding as two different pieces, right? The first is about clear expectations, clear goals, clear systems for tracking who's doing what and when it's due by. But look at that word context, right? And preferences. This is the softer stuff. This is an understanding of how people like to receive feedback, how they make requests for help. Often in a workplace, people do what they think is a request for help. Other people on their team don't recognize it as that, and so they don't step up to provide it. And now we have a team member who feels isolated and ignored. So if you have a sense of shared understanding, you understand their preferences. Context, especially over the last year, is hugely important. In a remote environment, everybody is working in a little bit different context. I mean, we're more than a year into this, but yet some people still don't have what they would call their sort of preferential or their optimal setup for working, right? So for some of us, I'm lucky enough to be beaming at you right now from about a 10 by 10 room in the basement of my house and a wired high-speed internet connection. Right? Both of my kids are now in in-person school, so they're not hogging my bandwidth doing Zoom school, and they're not making a ton of noise in the next room. Other people have been working from hiding behind a folding screen in their dining room, and at the other end of the dining room table are 2 or 3 children trying to learn via video chat. Right? That's a very different context, and if a team doesn't understand those differences in context, a lot of things can break down pretty easily, and shared understanding speaks to all of that. So how do we build a sense of shared understanding? This is a worthwhile question, right? How do we build that sense of shared understanding? Well, I want to give you 3 activities, 3 things you can work on with your team right now that'll help build that sense of shared understanding. And the first is to share calendars. Now, I mean this in a little bit different term than Outlook tends to use share calendars. What I don't mean by shared calendars is give everyone the ability to put a meeting on anyone else's calendar. I mean, if your team does that, great. I don't really recommend it. But what I mean by shared calendars is if you haven't figured it out, everybody's working a little bit different schedule. We've all been trying to figure out what rhythm of work works for us based on the context we're in, the other variables that we have. We've been trying to figure this out. And unlike the days when everybody was in a co-located office and you could rely on everybody being there 5 days a week, 8 or so hours a day, now everybody's calendars are all over the larger 168 hours in a week. And different members of a team need to know that. If there are time zone differences, we need to know and be aware of that. But even if there are just work preference differences, we need to know and be aware of that. So it's not enough. I mean, the first thing is to set that new schedule for yourself so you have definitive boundaries between work and life, but then also broadcast that out for the team. We should be aware of the hours each other are working and not working. Actually, let's use different terms, shall we? Let's use the terms responsive and non-responsive. That's really what we're looking for when we're trying to share calendars. We're trying to figure out when are people quick to respond, when should we expect a 30-minute or hour response to a quick email or a message in our chat tool, and when are they off for the rest of the day and we shouldn't expect something before, because otherwise a lot of weird pressure creeps up. That's what I mean by share calendars. Now, the next thing you can do is create as a team a working agreement or a social contract, or as I like to think of it sometimes, a declaration of interdependence, right? We know that talent flows from teams. We know that teamwork is hugely important. And in a remote context, teamwork and the ability to collaborate, communicate, share ideas, share feedback is even more important because we don't have the benefit of physical space to have quick side conversations or smooth over conflict. And so to some extent, we need to get that captured in a sense of norms. What a team working agreement is a shared document where the team actually has a meeting. It kicks off with about let's say 45 minutes to an hour long meeting where we answer all those unanswered questions about how we want to communicate and collaborate. So we answer questions like, what's a reasonable amount of time to reply to an email? Where do we want to have our asynchronous conversations? Is it a project management tool? Does the chat tool suffice? How do we want to give each other feedback? How do we want to make requests for help? How do we want to keep each other accountable to the deliverables that we committed to? All of these things go in that team working agreement, as well as any other questions. If whatever software and whatever tools you're using to collaborate, odds are there are unspoken norms about it. And because they're unspoken, people have different opinions about what that norm actually is. That's a recipe for miscommunication. And so we want to get all of those unspoken norms spoken, captured in that working agreement, get all of those questions answered. And then what I like to do, as I said, I like to think of this as a declaration of interdependence. So I reframe all the answers to these questions and create a shared document with the teams that I'm working with that says, we agree that 24 hours is a reasonable amount of time to wait for an email response before calling a person. We agree that we're going to treat this chat tool as an asynchronous communication and not expect immediate responses. We agree that requests for help need to be made in this forum. We agree that. And what I love about a working agreement is not only is it to get all of those unspoken differences that we perceive to be norms spoken and actually norms, this is a great document to give to new hires. It's a great onboarding tool. Imagine joining a team and being handed the user's manual for how that team likes to work, right? So no questions, no having to figure it all out. Just here you go. Here's the best way to work with our team. Welcome. Even better, imagine if you have this document and when you're interviewing candidates, you can say, this are the things that we agree to in order to keep our communication and collaboration on point. Does this work for you? And you can actually use it as a selection tool. That's the beauty of a working agreement. And the biggest thing it does, as I said earlier, is that it reinforces this idea that we are all in this together and we need to get our communication and collaboration in sync because we are interdependent upon each other. This is not about, remote work is not about independence. It's not about working alone. It's about working alone together. And a working agreement speaks to that. And the last thing, once you have the working agreement in place, and this might be something you want to talk about in the working agreement is what I could call huddles, or a lot of times in agile software development, what's called a daily stand-up. I like the term huddle because not every team needs a daily, but this is a regular system in place where the whole team checks in together and updates each other on what did I just complete, what am I focused on now, and what's blocking my progress, or where do I need help. These huddles, it's a very short, it can be a 9-minute conversation, right? 60 seconds per team member. So I guess that really depends on how many team members you have. But if you had 9, it can be a 9-minute conversation. It's just a quick way to get the team in sync. One of the things I keep hearing from managers of newly remote teams that didn't intend to be collaborating remotely, but are part of the great work from home experiment, is that they feel like they don't manage a team anymore. They had a team of 9, and now they just manage 9 individual relationships. And that can be a recipe for disaster in a couple different ways. First of all, that's a lot to keep track of for any given manager or leader. But second of all, the likelihood that that manager is going to be able to answer every question, the likelihood that they're going to be able to provide every resource is slim. And so they're just going to have to connect you to other people on the team. But if the team is communicating regularly, then we're all aware of those things. And that's what a huddle does. It brings the team together and it teaches them to work out loud. It teaches them to be broadcasting what they're working on a regular basis so that everybody's aware. They're aware of project pivots. They're aware of deadlines that may or may not be missed, but they're also aware of each other's challenges and can step up and make those offers of help without having to go through the individual manager. So it takes a load off the manager for sure, but it also builds a great sense of team cohesion, and it builds that sense of shared understanding, which you remember was our first in the threefold formula to a thriving remote team. Now, our second was the sense of shared identity. And this is, if shared understanding was like the 2020 problem, as everybody's moving to this great work from home experiment, we're all trying to figure out the context each other are working in and how to work. If shared identity was sort of the 2020, shared understanding was the 2020 problem, shared identity is sort of the 2021 and beyond problem. As we move to a more hybrid workplace where some people are wanting to work in an office, some people are wanting to work from home, and most people are wanting a little bit of both, shared identity becomes the huge issue. Shared identity is the extent to which team members feel the same sense of who they are as a designated group. It's the extent to which people feel like they can actually identify with that team. This is my team. Not that there's little micro teams inside of one team. You know, every organization has to deal with silos and politics and turf wars, but prior to about a year ago, most of those were functional, right? Marketing always feuded with legal, right? Marketing wants to push the boundaries on what we can get away with the budget. Legal wants to reel them back in, right? Some of them don't make any sense. I've often wondered why marketing and sales never seem to get along, even though they're collaboratory. But all of these different silos and clusters were often based on function. When a hybrid work environment, the big thing to look out for is an us versus them that can creep up inside of individual teams based on who's chosen to be co-located, who's chosen to be fully remote, and who is halfway in between. The worst thing we could do is to start acting or feeling like the team is really the people who show up to a singular place every day, or vice versa, that the team is really the remote people and the people who show up every day just do so not because they have to and their work isn't as important or something crazy like that. And that's why we need to be building this sense of shared identity now so that we have built bonds together as a team. Now, this isn't, I want to emphasize, shared identity isn't built through individual team building events, right? Even before the pandemic, when team building events like ropes courses, trust falls, all of those things you may have been dragged to at one time, there was not a lot of data to suggest they worked, because while they were a great one-time experience, they didn't often translate into everyday behaviors. And now, of course, it's almost impossible to have those events, right? How do you do a ropes course in Microsoft Teams? Do you mail people like their own rope ladders and then video? And it just doesn't work, right? But the truth is, team building has never been an event. It's always been a series of habits. Shared identity is built through a series of habits, not a one-time event. So here's a couple habits that you could use to build this sense of shared identity on your team. The first, it's one of my absolute favorites, it's fika. Fika is a Swedish word. It translates as to have coffee. In the Swedish tradition, it's a coffee break, right? It's a regular time in the day where people break from work, pull back from work, and connect with other humans. That's the big part. If you ask anybody in Sweden about the tradition of fika, it's very rarely about the coffee. I mean, it is about the coffee. The coffee is great, but it's also about the conversation. It's about the people. And I have yet to find a fully distributed team that doesn't have some version of a regular break where we pull back from work and allow for chats, non-work conversations between teams. Some of them use the term fika, some of them don't. I wish I could get more to use them because, let's just be honest, it's a great word. So in a digital fika, in this system, you'd have a time set aside, maybe once a week, and people would opt in to be randomized with people from throughout the company or throughout your team, and set up for that specific time for a non-work conversation. Depending on your team, you may want to seed them with questions. You may want to ask questions that speak to disclosure about each other's habits, hobbies, background, etc., things that you can connect over. But you may not, right? You may want to just leave it an open conversation. It depends to me really on whether or not you feel that the team knows each other all that well from before they started remote. If you have newly hired remote workers, then you might want some more structure as people get to know each other. You also don't have to randomize them into those groups. You could actually just have a regular series where everybody is paired up in different weeks. And so throughout the course of maybe half a year, everybody gets at least one fika with everyone else on the team. At a minimum, if you're a team leader, this is something you should be doing on a regular basis. This isn't the work check-in. This isn't the once a week coaching call, etc. This is a time for a non-work conversation that lets people talk about what else is going on in the rest of their lives. And the reason fika works is that it creates into people a sense of uncommon commonalities. Uncommon commonalities, that's the broad level term. Sometimes in nerdy network science literature, like I like to read, usually when I'm trying to fall asleep, it's referred to as multiplex ties. But it's the things that we have in common that with one or two members of a team that the rest of the team doesn't have. The research shows overwhelmingly that we bond with people who have those little things in common. But we never find those things in common unless we have that time to have a non-work conversation and learn a bit about each other. And fika does that. The other thing you could try, think of this as sort of group fika, is a regular recurring shared meal. I know numerous virtual teams I've worked with in the last year that are doing this on a regular basis, and it's becoming the highlight of a lot of people's month, sometimes a lot of people's week. I wouldn't go more than once a week on this. A shared meal works, I mean, sort of like a shared meal on a team like we used to have in person. And there's a ton of research that suggests that humans really do bond over the breaking of bread together. I mean, we already sort of knew that, but it's always great when psychology catches up to things we knew like a millennia ago. But there's a number of studies on that. And interestingly enough, sharing the same cuisine, sharing the same plates, doing what we call in the West, in North America, family style, what everywhere else is just called normal, that actually builds an even higher sense of bond. So a shared meal can be as little as saying, you know, we're all in the same time zone. What if every Wednesday we got together and we did lunch together and we had a non-work conversation? Or it can be as much as one team that I really, really admire, one fully distributed company I admire, that does a regular event the first Thursday of every month. They get together for tacos. They call it Taco Thursday. I know what you're thinking. I have no idea why it's not called Taco Tuesday. I mean, it's right there. The joke is right there, and they just missed it by 2 days. But on Taco Thursday, first Thursday of every month, everyone on the team goes and gets tacos from their favorite place to get it. Their favorite local Mexican restaurant, taco truck, taqueria, hopefully not Taco Bell, but somewhere, you know, good. And they get together for that regular lunch. And if you show up and you show your food, you get the cost of that meal reimbursed at the end of the month, right? Other teams do this by mailing out Uber Eats or DoorDash cards ahead of time. You can do this in a bunch of different ways. But it's the actual ritual of it. It's the fact that it's a shared cuisine and the fact that it's a regular recurring event that really bonds people together over Taco Thursday. You know, if you try this, you know what I'm going to tell you. Please do it on a Tuesday. But that's how well shared meals can work. And the last is rituals. Rituals are something teams have bonded together for over millennia as well. And just like shared meals, there's a wealth of newer research lining up with what we already know. I mean, if you think about any community group you're a part of, any identity group or team that you're a part of, odds are there are rituals. Small rituals like acronyms that your team or your company uses that nobody else would understand, jargon, but then regular behaviors as well, little activities that you do, that you're a part of, that are unique to you, right? So for example, I've spent the entirety of my life almost in the martial arts, and you find that in the martial arts, even before and after sparring with someone, there is a ritual. And it actually depends on the martial art. A lot of them have a bowing ritual. Now I participate in a really esoteric martial art known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And for some reason, everybody there, we slap hands, we bump fists, and then we spar. And I have no idea why. I've been doing it for 15 years, but it's a ritual that bonds people together. When somebody knows that little ritual, you know that they get it. The problem with rituals in the past is that they were often built based on being co-located. They were built based on being together, right? And what that creates in a virtual environment is a difficulty finding those inside jokes, those little small rituals. But thriving remote teams have found a way to build that back. They've found a way to create rituals that work for them. So in the last year, I've worked with teams that, one of their virtual rituals is that they made a set of virtual backgrounds that you could use that had each of the company's core values on it. And before every all hands meeting, you would reflect really briefly, browse through the gallery and pick a core value that you really wanted to emphasize. And when you showed up on that video call, you had it above you. I want to emphasize being bold, or I want to emphasize being inclusive. And then in that meeting, you were expected to be practicing that one. Everybody knew that this was your opportunity to work on it. I mean, imagine what it would be like. How cool is that, right? Showing up on a video call, you get that Brady box grid of faces, but everybody has a word or a phrase that is what they want to work on, that is something that is unique to the company and important to the whole team's culture around that. Now, other teams I've worked with have what would appear to be totally meaningless rituals, but actually do bond people. So a couple months ago, I was working with a team and I was presenting with them, and I realized that rather than use an applause emoji or type anything in the chat, whenever they agreed with what a speaker was saying, they made the silent clapping motion from sign language, or what some people call jazz hands. So you'd make a good point, you'd make something you think is really kind of astute, and all of a sudden the screen would be flooded with people doing this. And it's totally weird as an outsider at first, but by the end of the call, I felt like an insider. Right? By the end of the call, that little ritual that synchronized everybody up built that sense of bond that wouldn't otherwise have happened. I mean, it was this kind of cool, fantastic, seemingly meaningless ritual. And that's what I mean. So, I mean, take a minute to reflect. Are there any virtual or are there any real life rituals that you could make virtual? And if not, how could you create your own inside action, inside joke, inside acronym that would help your team develop that ritual that will build them together? Now, the last thing, remember, rituals are part of what it takes to build shared identity. Shared identity along with shared understanding is part of our 3 elements of a thriving remote team, but we're missing one, and we're missing perhaps the most important one. And that is the sense of psychological safety. Psychological safety, by the way, is something that's true for in-person teams as well, but it's more important on a remote team, and I hope you'll see why in a second. Psychological safety is the extent to which team members feel safe to express themselves and to take risks. It's the extent to which people feel like if they speak up, they will be listened to and considered and not immediately shut down. It's the extent to which people feel like they can present new creative ideas, because, by the way, presenting any new idea is itself a risk. It's the extent to which people feel fully included, like they can be their full selves at work and on their team. And without a sense of psychological safety, we get a lot of people self-censoring. Without a sense of psychological safety, we limit the capacity of our people to submit ideas. I mean, there's a moral case to be made for psychological safety, right? Like, it sounds great if we're in a situation where everybody feels included. Yes, totally. There's a capitalist case to be made too. And I don't mean to imply here that capitalism and morals are opposed, but I don't have a lot of evidence to the contrary. What I mean by a capitalist case is that you hired people because of their knowledge, skills, and abilities. You hired people because of their past expertise and the ability to solve problems and create value for you, your team, and your organization. But if they don't feel free to express themselves fully, if they don't feel free to speak up when they disagree, if they don't feel free to present a new idea to the team, then you are not getting your full money's worth. If they are self-censoring, then you are not getting the full capacity of themselves. They're not fully engaged. So there's multiple reasons we ought to be building psychological safety. And the reason it's so important in a remote environment is that it is harder to do remotely. It's harder to speak up on a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams call, right? It's harder to express dissent and disagreement in text. I mean, it's harder to even convey that you trust and respect other people in text because you don't have the benefit of vocal tonality, facial expressions, etc. And even in a meeting, it's way too easy to misread people. You might make a joke that you think is funny and harmless, and somebody else disagreed, and you can't catch, like you can in a room, you can't catch that minute their facial expression changes for a microsecond, and you realize that you were misperceived and you need to apologize. You can't do that in a Zoom call anywhere near as easily. And as a result, trust suffers, right? That feeling of respect and civility suffers. It's not intentional, but it happens. So let's talk about how you can build psychological safety, especially on your remote team. What activities can you do to build this one? The first thing I would tell you is to treat conflict as collaboration. First of all, never assume consensus, right? Never assume that there isn't conflict. People disagree about the best way to go about just about everything. So it's there. But don't treat it as a bad thing. Treat it as a form of collaboration. When somebody speaks up and expresses dissent, they're not saying you're stupid and I disagree with you. What they're saying is I care so much about the success of this project that I can't help but point out the flaw that I see. And so if you treat conflict as collaboration, you would welcome that. In fact, if you're a team leader, you would actually encourage it, right? Don't assume consensus. Speak up and actively ask if people disagree. Now, the key here is that after they do, you need to make sure that they feel heard, right? So you need to fully understand the disagreement that they are going with. You don't need to change your point of view. You don't need to change your plan of action, but you do need to make sure that that person feels fully accepted, fully heard, fully listened to, instead of just, well, no, we're not going to do it that way because we're already too fast, or no, that's not how we do things around here, or no, we tried that a couple years ago and it didn't quite work. You need to actually have the conversation with the person you disagree with. When two people disagree, there is only opportunity. Because when two people disagree, there's either an opportunity to benefit from seeing the world from another person's perspective, or there's an opportunity to pivot the project and put it on a more likely path to success. You may not pivot the project. Even if you disagree and you stay the same, you have still benefited from seeing the world from that person's perspective. So treat conflict as collaboration and you'll build psychological safety. The next thing you can do is to celebrate failures. This is something every organization really struggles with, right? It's really hard to say, yay, we wasted 6 months of our time and tens of thousands of dollars pursuing this project and it didn't work. I get it. But there are always learning opportunities in every failure. It doesn't mean you need to actively encourage people to go out there and fail, but it means you need to not necessarily punish those people. You need to make sure that unless it truly was a people reason that project failed, that you don't treat it as a poor reflection of that person. Sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes great ideas just don't scale, right? I mean, I feel like, I don't know if you're the same way, I feel like every TV show I've ever loved got canceled way too soon, right? Sometimes great things just fail. But if we can pull the lessons out of that, if we can debrief afterwards, you know, I already told you about my love for martial arts, the fact that I've been practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 15 years now. We have a saying in that art that there is no losing. There is win or learn. Win or learn. And that's the attitude you're looking to cultivate on your team. Whether you're the leader or not, you are looking to pull the learning opportunity out of every failure. And if you do that, then you found something worth celebrating. So at the very least, just celebrate that learning opportunity. And the last thing to do, and this goes along with treating conflict as collaboration, is to encourage dissent. I already said don't assume consensus, but actively cultivate dissent. And it can be as little, it can be as big as asking people to shred apart your idea. It can be as big as taking two different teams inside your larger team, breaking them into two different groups and saying, you work on this project, you work on all the reasons this project could fail. Right? That's sometimes called red teaming, right? It can be as big as appointing a devil's advocate in a team meeting so that anytime somebody speaks up with an idea, we have a person whose job is to push back on the idea, not disrespectfully. So don't do this if you don't feel like your team has cultivated that sense of respect, but that you're still encouraging that dissent by creating those two different teams. It can be as small, though, as changing some of the verbiage around how you call for things. So I was a full-time business school professor for almost a decade. And one of the things I learned, particularly when working with undergraduates, but the working adults and the executive education stuff that I did, I found the exact same lesson. I found that if I talked for a while and then I said the phrase, any questions? There were never any questions. I mean, sometimes you could get somebody to summon the courage to ask that first question, and then there'd be a waterfall of questions because people felt like it was okay at that point. I'm sure you've been in a meeting like that. All right, but questions are even subtly a form of dissent. They're a form of, I didn't understand this point, or could you clarify this a bit more? Maybe I disagree with you, maybe I don't. And I'm not talking here about the questions that are actually long worded sentences that are sort of their own thesis, but they intone up at the end. And so they're pretending to be questions. I'm talking about real legitimate questions. So I found that if I asked for any questions, there never were any. But if I said, well, we've been talking about this concept for 30 minutes, and I know I must have glossed over something. What questions do you have for me? Suddenly that first person would be able to speak up a whole lot easier. And that first person would create the second, and suddenly we would have a real discussion based around some things I wasn't clear on, other things that I might disagree with, etc. So you can go as big as actively planning for two different teams to be opposing and dissenting each other, or you can go as small as changing to what questions do you have for me? Doesn't matter. In either case, encouraging that sense of dissent will encourage people to speak up, to feel trusted enough to speak up, and then your response to that will build the sense of respect that builds psychological safety. Now, along with psychological safety, remember we have shared understanding and we have shared identity. Now, I've been talking at you for a pretty long time. According to my clock, it's been 31 minutes. I hope you're still there. I mean, that's, to be honest, one of the weirdest things about virtual. But if you are still there, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, 3 times 3 different elements. He's given us 9 different things to build 3 different, oh, that's so much. I get it. I totally get it. What if there was one? What if there's one thing you could do today, right? Or plan and begin the process of doing today that would help you build both shared understanding, shared identity, and psychological safety? Which one would it be? Which one should I pick out of all of these different things? Well, I got you covered. Where do I start? Start with a team working agreement. Out of all of the things that I've covered here today, start with a team working agreement. And remember, a team working agreement is coming up with a list of questions and finding a dedicated block of time where your whole team can come together and get answers to that question. What tools do we want to use for what communication? What are our rules for how we're going to solicit feedback? Hey, what are our rules for how we're going to speak up and disagree with people so we can encourage dissent? If we get all of those answers together, if we build that sense of here is our declaration for interdependence. We build shared understanding because now we have norms about how we're going to collaborate. We build shared identity because now we have our declaration of interdependence. We are one team. This is how we work together. If you join this team, you join our way of doing things. So we have a strong sense of our own shared or group identity. And we build psychological safety because we build the rules for how people are going to take risks, how people are going to dissent, how people are going to ask questions. We build those rules into the working agreement. Start with this team working agreement, this social contract, this declaration of interdependence, and you will build all 3. You'll build shared understanding, you'll build shared identity, and you will build a sense of psychological safety. What you'll build, by the way, when you build all 3 of those things, is a thriving remote team. I think it's pretty clear a year plus into this great work from home experiment that the easiest answer to the question, what is the future of work, is working from anywhere. That means you need to develop the skills to lead from anywhere, whether you are in the title of a team leader or not. And the way to lead from anywhere is to start from a place of building shared understanding, shared identity, and psychological safety. And if you need an even easier start with that team working agreement, but don't not start. Right now, we're living in an opportunity to hone the skills it takes for lead from anywhere. Right now, we're living in a place where you can develop, we're working in a place where you can develop the skills of considering yourself a remote team leader, whether you've got the title or not. And that's something, remote team leader is something pretty much everybody needs to consider themselves for all time. The future of work is teams that are working from anywhere, collaborating from anywhere. And that means the future of leadership is the ability to lead from that anywhere. Now, you know what I'm going to say. We've covered a lot of material in a very short period of time. I blew through all of these different ideas for shared understanding, shared identity, etc. And I'm willing to bet there are going to be some questions, whether that's on social media, whether that's in the chat, etc. So I would love to take just a few minutes of our time together to talk about what questions there might be.
Thank you, David. This was amazing. I'm going to read out a few questions that we received. And here's the first one. Since we do remote work, we see an explosion in meetings. We feel burnouts in our teams. How can we motivate our people to do fewer meetings?
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like burnout and meetings are incredibly correlated. Let's get to the root of the issue first, and then I'll give you something practical, right? The root of the issue for me, for a lot of meetings, is twofold. Number one, there was this assumption based in the co-located office that presence equaled productivity, right? There was this idea that if I could see you, then I knew you were working. And when we slipped to this world where we're not all working together, instead of presence, we got responsiveness, we got meetings, right? And so that became part of the problem. The other is that we don't have really well-defined rules for collaborating asynchronously. Those things can happen really, really well if we build a team working agreement, right? So automatically, if we drop that and we do the working agreement, we're going to cut down on some of the meetings. The biggest thing is I actually think more meetings is okay as long as they're shorter and have a much shorter attendee list. In other words, you don't need to get your whole team together for every single meeting. You need to figure out one purpose per meeting, one agenda item per meeting, and then go, who are the people on the team that need to be there for that? Everybody else gets some time off, right? So you build the right agenda. And again, I recommend a 30-minute meeting on one is so much faster and more efficient than an hour-long meeting on 4 or 5 things. You're not going to get to all 4 or 5 things. So shorten the time frame, limit to one person per meeting, and pick the right attendees.
Thank you, David. Another interesting one, since today we learned about fika. Suggestions on questions, advice, and inquiries to ask during fika to boost productivity.
Yeah, so again, really the goal here is to be discovering those uncommon commonalities. So we want non-work conversations. It may feel like that means we're not being productive in the moment, but these are, I've used a variety of these different questions. Sometimes I'll use, what are you most excited about right now? Or what are you most looking forward to? That's an open-ended question. That can be a work-related question or a non-work related question. You answer it however you want. It could be that you just finally nailed a big client or a project. It could be that your 9-month-old figured out how to walk, right? You get to disclose whatever you want. I like the same retroactively. What are you most proud of? I like to ask people questions about their past, their history, right? Their habits, their hobbies. My favorite question, because I'm a total nerd, my favorite question to ask people is, who's your favorite superhero? I know that seems like a weird question, but here's what I mean. Everyone has a favorite superhero and a story behind why they like that superhero, or they hate superheroes. And even then, like, there's still a story usually. There's still some other thing from their childhood they were paying attention to instead of superheroes. So you ask that question, you can get the story behind it, and you can learn a ton about that person just by asking a question like, who's your favorite superhero? By the way, the right answer is Batman, of course. But if you also said Iron Man, I'd forgive that because really they're the same character.
Thank you, David. We're getting a few questions about hybrid working. What does hybrid mean? And do you really think that the new normal will be the hybrid workplace? A lot of people will have to go back to work after COVID-19 will be over, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, hybrid is the term a lot of people are using for, we're not going to expect everyone to be in the office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day anymore, right? But I prefer the term working from anywhere, right? Because I don't think it's binary. Hybrid kind of to me implies that it's working from the office or working from home. The truth is, I mean, I'm very, very bullish on co-working spaces and other places that might be a little closer to the home office. I'm also very bullish on the idea that now that we know location isn't a factor, bigger organizations can build teams from multiple different locations and rely on them to collaborate virtually. Where do I think this is all going to end up? My best data point, I mean, every week there's a different survey asking how much time people want to spend at the office, et cetera. And I think because we're still in pandemic mode, some people's kids are still Zoom schooling, some people still have a spouse or partner that's also working. I think this is actually a bad time to survey. But prior to the pandemic, January, February 2020, there was some great research from Gallup around engagement and percentage of the time at the office. And what Gallup found is that throughout 2019, when they were collecting data, people who were most engaged reported being out of the office 40 to 60% of the time. That doesn't mean they were at home. That means they were somewhere else, working from anywhere. And so I would expect around that, maybe 25 to 50% of the time. Some roles are obviously going to have to be at the office 100% of the time when that's easier. Some roles may never, but I think your average person is going to want to say, I like coming to the office. I like interacting with my coworkers and my peers. I don't like the commute, and I don't think I need to do that every single day. And we're probably going to settle on that idea that they're going to spend 25 to 50% of the time out of the office working from somewhere else.
Thank you, David. Just received this question. Can we have an example of a team working agreement?
So, I mean, I could send you a PDF document of them. There's a couple different ones if you search out through it. I have a document on my website, and I'll get it to the organizers so it can get out as a file to everybody as well. That are instructions on how to do it. That might be a better resource to share. Really quickly, it starts with scheduling a meeting and deciding on what questions you want. But I've got some sample questions and things like that I can throw in. As an example, and it'll guide you through how to do that. That'll probably work better than a specific example, just because every team is different, even inside the same company.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting asked about the templates for working agreements. So if it's possible to share that after the call, that would be great.
Yeah, I will do it. And I know that we're going to make recordings and all of that available, so I'll make sure that we make that available as well.
Okay, so these are the few of the selected questions I have so far. If anyone else has a question, can you please post in the next couple of minutes?
Okay, David, that was a phenomenal session. That was something really I will watch and rewatch on Christmas time, at New Year.
Christmas, wow, all right.
This is gold war. This is something like gold, and definitely thank you so much for presenting. You had, and I've been also doing the EMEA part, and we haven't had so many questions, and that shows how valuable your session is. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Now we have a small break where my producer is gonna play a video again, and then we will just continue with Scott Berkun with the myth of innovation. Producer, it's up to you.
Hello, and welcome to this short video series on the Valo Digital Workplace. I would like to start off this series by introducing Valo and our products. While we are very well known in the world for our intranet product, Valo is more than that. We have multiple products and experiences that together form the Valo Digital Workplace. Our goal is to help you get the most out of your digital workplace tools, and as our slogan says, make your users fall in love with their digital workplace. Let's see what are some of the products part of the Valo Digital Workplace. First of all, Valo Intranet. Valo Intranet is a ready-to-go intranet on top of modern SharePoint, allowing you to quickly deploy an efficient, beautifully branded, and easy-to-use intranet for your users. Valo Intranet has multiple features to make not only consumption, but content creation super easy, and multiple add-ons such as social, adoption, people, and multilingual in order to help you offer features to your users at multiple stages of your digital workplace deployment. We then have Valo Teamwork. Valo Teamwork allows you to find and manage your collaboration workspaces super easily, as well as manage groups from a single interface. From an IT professional perspective, Valo Teamwork allows you to easily implement a configurable provisioning system in order to enable approval before new Microsoft 365 groups or SharePoint sites are created, as well as pre-packaged workspace templates with pre-built SharePoint lists, libraries, web parts, as well as Teams channels and tabs. Next up, we have Valo Ideas, a co-innovation tool allowing you to implement a transparent idea management process and work together with everyone else in your organization to bring an idea to life. Valo Ideas has a native integration with Microsoft Teams as well as your intranet, allowing you to collaborate on ideas in your favorite tools. Next up, we have Valo Entrance, which is a tool that allows you to manage external users inside your Microsoft 365 tenant, as well as provide a self-service registration portal where external users can self-register and quickly have access to the tools that they need. Continuing on our experiences for external users, Valo Extranet can be the central location where external users can get the latest news and documents that you want to share with partners and collaborators that you work with. It's based on the same technology and features as Valo Intranet, but aimed at external users. Last but not least, Valo Connect is the digital workplace tool that consolidates all of your digital workplace tools and business applications into a single location, the user-loved Microsoft Teams. Valo Connect can bring in all of the Valo products that we have talked about so far, as well as any SharePoint Online page, Power App, or even embeddable third-party tool as a Microsoft Teams personal app. At Valo, we also believe that you should be able to be productive wherever in the world you are and what Microsoft 365 product you prefer to use. Therefore, Valo works either inside the browser as well as on your phone with dedicated mobile apps and directly inside Microsoft Teams, so you can always consume content from your preferred device. Valo is currently used by more than 800 customers and 3 million users across 50 countries. Our partner network is now composed of over 250 certified Valo partners across the globe, which are ready to help you get the most out of your digital workplace experience. Over the past few years, we have won numerous awards, the most recent ones being the Best Intranet and Extranet winner at the famous European SharePoint Conference in December 2019. In 2020, we have won the Intranet Choice Europe and North America in the prestigious Clearbox report, as well as the Microsoft ISV Partner of the Year in Finland. Finally, in 2021, we have won the Intranet Choice Global Award in the Clearbox report. This is it for this video. Thank you very much for listening to it, and check out our other videos part of this playlist that will show you the specific features that will make your users more productive and fall in love with their digital workplace.
Okay, we are ready to go. I really hope that you have enjoyed the keynote, that you have refilled the coffee and tea, and now it is time to listen to Scott Berkun with the Myths of Innovation. Scott is a best-selling author and popular speaker on creativity, leading projects, public speaking, design, and many other subjects. And what's really interesting is that his work has appeared in the New York Times, Washington Post, and Forbes, etc. So we have a rock star on stage with us. Hey, Scott, can you hear me? No, but producer, then I think you can go.
Hello, Valo Fest. My name is Scott Berkun, and I'm here to talk to you about the myths of innovation. Now, innovation is probably a word that gets thrown around a lot in your circles, and I'm here to help you understand really how that word should be used, or more precisely, the ways that it's often misused, which is a great way to go about doing better at making good work happen. If you eliminate the things that cause the most problems or are most likely to get in your way, the most common kinds of confusion, then you'll be more likely to be able to do good work. So that's my goal for you. I have about 25 minutes. I'm going to tell you some stories. I'm going to give you some insights. Hopefully that will stay with you and you'll be able to apply them when you're working on just about anything. So I'm going to switch to slides now. I have some fancy stories to tell you that involve some images. So I want to make sure I do that. Let me get all this set up real quick. Make sure that you can see me okay. As I'm doing that, you should know that I am active on Twitter. So if you see something you like, something that strikes you, something you want to share, please do that and tag me. If you have a question, if you have a thought, if you disagree with me about something, go ahead and put that up there as well, because I will respond and get back to you. Obviously not right now because I'm presenting, But when I'm done with the presentation, I'll go through and see all the mentions, see what you have to say, and respond to you there, so we can keep the conversation going forward. So this word innovation, before I can tell you about that word and how to be smarter about it, there's this other word, this word epiphany. Now, the word epiphany is usually the first word people think about when they think about ideas and creativity, flashes of insight. And most stories that we share with each other, you read about in the news, or you get told about in school, usually involve someone with some breakthrough idea. You learn about the moment they had it, and that's pretty much all that you're told. And so the implication is that having a flash of insight, having a breakthrough idea is the most important part. Now, this is what is called, or what I call, the myth of epiphany. The myth of epiphany is any story you hear that focuses on a singular moment when something was discovered or invented or a breakthrough happened. And it usually involves one person, and it often involves some kind of dramatic event. Someone was eating dinner, someone was driving, someone was in a bathtub, or in the case of the image shown here, someone watched an apple fall. So what is probably the greatest story of discovery and invention that we have, Isaac Newton and the discovery of gravity. The event, as we all know it, he was sitting around doing nothing, watched an apple fall, and that's how he discovered gravity. So that's a typical epiphany myth. And we tell that story, it's in our books. The problem with the myth, and the problem with all epiphany myths, is they are, first and foremost, they're usually wrong. They're usually exaggerations of what actually happened. But second, and more importantly to you, they don't help us. They're not useful in thinking about creativity. They're not useful in understanding habits or playbooks for how ideas become things that improve the world. In the reality of the story, Isaac Newton was a scientist. And what he became famous for was not discovering gravity, because he was alive in the 17th century. For hundreds of years, we've known about the basics of gravity. We constructed pyramids. The Romans constructed aqueducts that all depended on a knowledge of gravity and science and engineering. So he couldn't have discovered gravity. We kind of already knew intuitively how it worked. What Isaac Newton actually did and became famous for was developing a theory mathematically that explained how gravity worked. And that took him years of research and study and experimentation to do. That truth that I just shared with you makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense than the Apple story, but it's not as fun to tell. There's no dramatic moment to it. There's no epiphany. So because we have a preference for these dramatic stories, the real story about Isaac Newton rarely gets shared or told. And that's the problem with myths of epiphany. You probably will hear them in your organization. You probably hear them in project teams, and you hear them referred to when speakers talk about events, the singular moment. And that's the problem. So the first thing to get past that myth is to recognize this is a common pattern. It shows up even in advertisements. There's a famous ad from the 1970s about Reese's peanut butter cups and how they were invented. It's a ridiculous ad. It was popular in my childhood. There were two people walking down the street, one holding a tub of peanut butter, the other holding a chocolate bar. They collided because they weren't looking where they were going. And the first said, "You put your peanut butter in my chocolate." And the other one says, "You put your chocolate in my peanut butter." And then they're arguing, and then one of them tastes it, the other one tastes it, they go, "Oh," then the commercial ends. As if this is how candy gets invented, random occurrences. So you hear lots of stories about how things like Pyrex or the microwave oven were invented by accident. In reality, in the majority of those stories, there were people hard at work on some kind of problem. They're a scientist or an engineer. Something weird happened, and instead of ignoring it, they chose to investigate it. And they spent time, often years, trying to understand and do other experiments to get to the point where that accident becomes science and becomes something understood that can be applied to solve a problem. So this is a pervasive myth. And now that I've told you about it, you'll probably hear and notice it everywhere. And I want to try to help you debunk these myths and recognize they're a problem. So focusing on a singular moment in these stories is the trap. Don't allow yourself to be focused on the moment. Instead, when you hear one of these stories, you want to start asking questions. And I'll talk more about those questions in a second. The first lesson for you is about habits. And habits have become so popular now. Understanding habit loops, the book, The Power of Habit, James Clear's book, The Atomic Habits. So you should have some sensibility that the way that we really progress and make things happen is, what do we do every day? What are our routines? And the same thing is true for innovation and creativity. That a better question to ask about all these stories is, well, what happened before? Fine. Someone had an epiphany. That's what we're told about how the copy machine was invented or the iPhone was invented. There was an epiphany. Fine. Well, what was that person doing 5 minutes before this? A day before? A week before? A month before? Now you can start to get information. And usually the person telling you this, the epiphany myth, has no idea. They can't answer that question, which is a good sign that they're a victim of the myth too. But you ask that question and you start to realize, oh, there's a pattern here. In the case of Isaac Newton, he spent a lot of time observing things, asking questions like, why do clouds move the way that they do? Why does light refract the way that it does? And he would do experiments. So he was looking around and asking questions about stuff all the time. This moment where he may have been watching an apple, which is not entirely clear whether it actually happened or not, was one moment in a set of habits he had for a long time. And then even if he had that flash of insight, let's say it did happen, as I told you, he spent years developing that epiphany into an actual theory, actual work that could solve a problem. So if you catch one of these myths and you hear it, a coworker, a boss asks, well, what were they doing before that? What did they do after? You could have a great idea for a new company, a great idea for a new, plugin, a great idea for a new business or a book or a novel. Great. You're still going to have to put in the work to find funding for your idea, to convince a coworker of your idea, to write the manuscript, to write the screenplay. That's really how it happens. So you can't lose track of that in all of these stories. Now, the second lesson for you has to do with people. As much as we romanticize ideas, and your bosses and coworkers may talk about innovation, that that's what you do, or an innovation organization, our mission is innovation, that's just a word. It's very convenient to say. It sounds good. It makes people feel good. But in reality, human beings are conservative creatures. We're built for survival. That's what we are engineered and designed to do, to try to survive. And once we find a place that we're safe, we tend to want to stay there. So if you're a leader in an organization and you have a team that's doing work in a certain way, a certain process, a certain set of standards, a certain group of people that make decisions, it's going to tend to stay that way. No matter how good an idea is, the reality is people are going to tend to want to stay the same. So you have probably heard terms like this in your working experience. Oh, we tried that before. Well, it's not, we don't do that here. That's a nice idea, but we don't have time. These are what I call idea killers. They're false constraints. They're usually said by people in power to end a conversation about a new idea. And I call them false constraints because they're actually logical fallacies. They're fallacies. If someone says we tried that before, they're assuming that by trying it now, it will have exactly the same outcome. And that's probably not true. It could be that when it was tried before, there was no budget. So you tried it before, but not in a way that could possibly work. Or it could be the people who worked on it last time were not very smart. It was the worst people in the company. Or it was a bunch of monkeys. A bunch of monkeys with no money worked on this. But just to say this phrase implies that because you did it once before, it can never work. So what does this mean? This means that if you have ideas, they could be very good, but you have to anticipate the natural resistance ideas are going to have from other people. And it's your ability to anticipate these kinds of resistance, these questions, and your ability to have counter responses that's going to determine the fate of your ideas. Now, you'll rarely hear this talked about in intellectual circles and technology circles about great ideas. We talk about the technology, the toolkit, how it was built. But this is the real story why some ideas get made and most of them don't. So as an example of a counter move, someone says, we don't have time. Well, wait a second. Don't we have a schedule that has work items on it that have not been done yet? If that's true, couldn't we swap out one of those work items and put in this idea that I'm suggesting in place? Of course you could. The question is, do you want to? Is the new idea good enough to replace something that's already on the docket to be done in the future? Now, that's a longer conversation. So a lot of these idea killers are really about project managers, which I spent most of my career doing, really just wanting to shorten the conversation and not have to talk about it. So, but you need to know this. This is part of your toolkit. You have to be thinking about people and the resistance to change and what your idea is going to make, what kinds of change your idea implies, and how are you going to make that palatable for other people. Now, a big part of this is pitching ideas. And a lot of people think pitching ideas is it's a soft skill. Why should I learn that? If my idea is really good, why should I have to pitch it? But this is naive about human nature. To pitch an idea means you've thought through who you're pitching it to. It means you've thought through what their goals are, what they're trying to do, what problem they're trying to solve. And you're framing your idea in a context that will make sense for them. So that's a kind of lateral work. You have a great idea, but who's going to support it? Why would they? Have you expressed it in a way that solves a problem they care about? So this is an essay I wrote. It's a chapter in the book, The Myths of Innovation. It's available for free. If you're interested in being better at pitching, it's a good place to start. You can do a Google or Bing search for how to pitch an idea and my name, and you'll find it, and that should help you on your way. Now, my third lesson for you is about designing the system. So a lot of the problem with innovation and talk of innovation, it imagines that, again, the idea is important, and once you have the thing, you've built the new technology, you've built the iPhone, you've built the light bulb, then after that moment, everything else worked out fine, because that's all it takes. It's just having the great idea. Now, the story of the light bulb is so important in history, it has become the icon for having an idea. It's what we put over someone's head when they're having an idea, because it's so profoundly changed society. And it's one of the first great examples of technological innovation that had such a profound change. But what most people don't know about Thomas Edison's story is that the light bulb, and this is something Thomas Edison recognized, the light bulb itself didn't really do very much. If you had 1,000 light bulbs in 1850, they would be worthless because there was nothing to screw them into. And if you screwed them into a fixture, it wasn't connected to anything. So there's a whole series of other kinds of inventions and systems that need to be in place before the light bulb had any value. So Thomas Edison was not the first person to invent the light bulb. There are other inventors who had working light bulbs. He gets credited for it because he was the first to master the whole system thinking of all the parts and pieces and successfully introduce it into society. Now, the light bulb, right, has to connect to a fixture, has to connect to electrical cables, which have to be in buildings, which then have to be in the street. And then somewhere after all of that, still, you need to generate the power. If you don't have a power generator, what good's a light bulb? No good. So he had thought through the invention of all these other pieces and then decided, okay, now it's time to work on the light bulb. And that's why it all came together. So you have to think about the system. Your idea on its own is going to introduce new dependencies and change things. You have to think those through if you really want to make the whole innovation work. The best definition of innovation means you've made progress happen in a systemic way. You've raised the bar for not just, you haven't just added a feature. That's kind of trivial. That's just doing your job. You've now elevated the state of the art for a whole field, a whole product line. And to do that usually requires a system level development. Now, one part of innovation is, again, people, not your coworkers, but users. When you introduce something new, it could be a great idea from your perspective, but you're going to introduce change for people. And people, again, don't like to change. They're going to have to learn. A lot of great ideas never gain adoption because they're too hard to learn. And the inventor didn't think about the transition from the old way of working to the new. So this sign is a real sign, and it seems ridiculous. But up until the electric light, people lit lights. They had lamps. You had to ignite them with fire. So when the switch happened, people didn't know how they worked. You needed these signs to explain to them. And you have to imagine this is what innovation looks like when it first happens. It's messy. It's confusing. It's weird for people, even if you're doing it right. So as an innovator with a new idea, you have to think through not only the consequences for your coworkers to convince them and get support, you have to also be thinking about your customers and their user experience. Not only the consequences for your coworkers to convince them and get support, you have to also be thinking about your customers and their user experience. and how your new idea is going to introduce change. Is the amount of change you're going to force them to deal with really worth the benefit? Often we think it is, but often it's not, because we haven't thought about it at all. We assume it's good. It's a new version. They're going to get the upgrade. Of course it'll be better, but you got to investigate that. Think that through. Edison did that to some extent, but he wasn't really a designer. He wasn't really thinking about user experience work. But you should make that part of your process for developing an idea. Now, one thing we can credit Thomas Edison with is this romanticized notion of what an innovator looks like. He loved to promote himself as the lone genius, even though most of his patents have the names of all of his coworkers, his engineering staff on them. He was the figurehead. He wanted the attention, in part to protect his team, let them focus on the work, but also because he loved being the center of attention. And he defined the model in America of the entrepreneur genius. It was him who created this brooding image. Look at him. Look at him. He's like, oh, I'm working so hard. My brain is working so hard. I can't even smile to have this image made of me. And this is now the model that we have. All the great innovators, people who we like to think of as iconoclasts, they all are photographed and memorialized, and media, we like to represent them in this way. So you can find this representation through all the major people, and they love to be filmed alone. You never see their team. You never see the people who pitch the ideas. You never see the people who really drive the innovative work. They're never around. They're never mentioned, in part to perpetuate this mythology that this one lone person. In reality, all of this work is done collaboratively, all of it. There's multiple people involved over years, developing ideas, collaborating, getting feedback from each other. And that's part of what goes wrong for people when they're trying to be innovators. They think it's me. I want to do it. But you can't. There's too many diverse kinds of skills and intelligence that you need to do it well. So this is Marie Curie, one of the only people ever to get a Nobel Prize in 2 fields. Look at her image, how she's presented here. Frida Kahlo, one of the great artists in Western history. This iconography runs it through the history of innovation. And it's very rare you see people actually being human, having fun, smiling, being seen with coworkers again. You don't see that very much, but that's the real story. It's far more of a human, ordinary process, collaborative and involving human nature. And this mythology we like, just like the Epiphany myth, we like it. Geniuses, yeah. But it's far more of a human story than we're led to believe. Now, to finish up my story about Thomas Edison and the light bulb, so part of what he had to do, he had the idea, he figured out these other pieces. I need all these other parts to work, the fixtures, electricity, power supply. He also needed permission from some city to rip up the street and put in these wires that had never existed before. These fire wires. People were scared of electricity. It was dangerous. So this might be the most impressive feat in the entire story about the light bulb. He was able to convince New York City in the Lower East Side, which is shown here, to allow him to rip up the streets and put in power cables, and to get property to put in power stations, power supplies, dynamos, all these other inventions that almost never get talked about. Infrastructure, the infrastructure that no customer would ever see, that was essential to make the whole thing work. You could argue this was the invention, this was the innovation, all the other parts and pieces that had to be thought about that no one would ever notice, that needed to work reliably and safely. That's really the story, the system. So having an idea is great. Thinking about the people, yeah, who you're going to convince, get support, get the money, convince your boss, build the thing, great. How's it going to affect people, the user, the change? And then what are the other parts of the system you need to make it all work? That's what makes breakthroughs happen. That's how innovation happens. So the last part of this is designing for the system of people and thinking about you, thinking about your ideas. So you probably have a coworker, a boss, maybe a client. It could be an engineer who's important and makes decisions. There's someone you're going to have to work with, the system of people. And the questions to think about, you have your idea, you have your epiphany. Before you go too far, you want to think, who trusts me? This idea is going to introduce change. Who's going to trust me to lead them through that change, or to think through the consequences and the possible fallout and the plan for who trusts me? How much do they trust me? Who can I convince to try this thing out? Often our epiphanies are grand. We want to revolutionize something. We think, wow, we want sweeping change. That's really scary for most people. So you have to think, what's the scale of my idea and the amount of trust I have from the person whose support I need to do it? They have to match or be close. If you have a grand idea and you have a lousy reputation, or you're new and no one trusts you yet, you're going to pitch a grand idea. They're going to blow you off because you haven't earned their trust yet. So a lot of the way that breakthroughs and progress happens in organizations requires the building of trust. A small idea, okay, try it out. You show it worked. And then they're like, yeah, that was good. Then you come back, a bigger idea. You have to grow relationships in the system of people in order to get the support that you need to make these things happen. And a lot of this is based on who owes you a favor, who can you say, hey, look, remember that time I did this thing for you? Well, can you help me out here and speak up for me when I pitch this in the meeting? This is social relationships. It's not technology exactly. It's the system of people. And that's how progress and innovation happens. So that's my last story for you. These are the 4 lessons I offer to you. It's a habit. Don't get lost in the myth of epiphany. You hear an epiphany story, ask what happened before, what happened later. Recognize people resist change no matter what they say. So your idea has to be shaped and framed and pitched thoughtfully about how it's going to solve a problem or satisfy a goal. Think about the system. Light bulb, worthless. Needed all the other parts. And then lastly, this all depends on people and your relationships and how much trust you've earned. All these stories and lessons come from this book, The Myths of Innovation. It was a bestseller. It still sells well. If you like these stories, you should check the book out. There's a summary of the book at scottberkun.com/10 myths if you want a primer on the whole book. And again, please, if you like this talk, say something on Twitter, tag me, a quote you liked, this image of the summary, whatever you like. If you have a question, you can follow up with me there. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. See ya.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I have a few questions from socials, and I would like to ask one by one. How do you know if you have a good idea?
Well, you know you have a good idea by stepping back from the excitement of the epiphany moment, stepping back and asking the question, what problem are you trying to solve? So we have an idea because we're lost in thought. Something comes to us. We have that rush of excitement, but we may be excited about it because we're interested in it. We had that emotional experience. You know, you have a good idea in a context. An idea is only good or bad in a context. So you have to think, we have this customer, we have this scenario they care about. Does this idea that I'm excited about actually help solve a problem that we need to solve on this project for this person? And you often find that sometimes it matches, but sometimes your great idea really is just exciting and interesting to you, but doesn't actually solve a problem in the context. So that's a good question to ask. What problem does this solve and who does it solve it for?
Thank you, Scott. I have another one. What holds innovation back in most organizations?
Well, it's fun, like the phrasing of the question it makes sense, but it's almost backward. That the default state of people is to be conservative, to make change not happen. We want to keep our jobs. We want to keep our project running smoothly. Everything we're doing, we want to keep doing it. So it's almost the opposite, that it takes something special and a special set of circumstances. And as I mentioned in the talk, the ability to persuade and to shape an idea into goals that seem more comfortable for people to make it happen. So it's really the opposite, and it's the people who have power. It's the decision makers who decide what's going to change. So the burden is always on the people who have the most power in the room to say, yes, let's try that as an experiment, as opposed to saying, no, we tried that before.
Right. Thank you. And finally, last question. How can I learn more about how innovation truly happens?
Well, I think the spirit of my my work is we learn through stories. So find better quality stories to help you answer the questions or learn the skills that you want. And pay attention to the fact we're drawn to the myths. So the things you're going to be excited about first are going to be shallow stories. Instead, find better sources. The sources I gave you, the stories I told you, I hope they were better. My book is filled with the same kind of stories, but you can find them just about everywhere. When you hear a great idea, read about how did that come to be? What did the person who had that idea, what did they have to do to make it real? Become a student of those real stories, and you'll learn lots of things and real lessons that will help you on your way.
Thanks, Scott. I think I'll have to get that book now. For sure. All right. Berkun, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate all the questions from the attendees. Thank you so much, Scott. Was a real great session. I really enjoyed seeing my preferred innovator, Elon Musk, on your screen. So thank you so much, and hope to see you in another event at ValoFest. Now it's time for Alysha Campbell. Alysha is an accomplished and respected strategic HR leader with a decade of experience. Alysha has truly seen and done it all in the HR space. So we have someone which is a real guru, a rock star of HR. Alysha, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can. Hi.
Hey, how are you doing today, Alysha?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Wonderful. Thanks so much. If I have to say something to you, is that Alysha is my preferred name in the US. Don't ask me why, but Alysha sounds so great. And I'm pretty sure your session will be great as your name. So stage is yours, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who took the time to attend ValoFest. This content has been absolutely incredible with all the speakers. Super excited to get into it. So today what I'm going to be discussing with you is shifting company culture virtually. This is definitely a topic that is on a lot of leaders' minds as we are now over a year in lockdown. And we need to continually innovate. We need to continually think forward on how we're going to engage our employees and make our company cultures come alive and push the envelope. So as an agenda, do a little bit of an introduction about myself so you get to know me as a person. We're going to talk about cultural survival, virtual versus in-person, body language, shifting using virtual principles, the formula for a successful shift, and then we're going to get into some awesome Q&A. So a little bit about me. I've been in the HR and talent management space for over 10 years, and I'm super fascinated and driven to help employees connect with their work purpose. Online, I also call myself a purpose consultant because when you're able to find your purpose within your work, it makes your work engaging, it makes it thoughtful, and you're really able to step into the next layer of what you're supposed to be doing, not just from a work perspective, but as a whole individual. In 2018, I founded Culture Shift HR, which is my own consultancy firm, and I did it as a means to connect brands and businesses that want to truly have an employee first and inclusive workplace for their staff. My saying is that your business is your people. I don't care if you sell a product, you sell a service. If you have someone out there pitching on your behalf, that person is your business. And so you want to make sure that every day they are showing up to an organizational culture that is driven, that is engaging, and that's helping them to fulfill their purpose. The organism of culture fascinates me, and I work very hard to help clients unmystify it and work within it to drive the results they want. So can a virtual culture survive? We're now, again, a year into the pandemic, and majority of us have probably been working virtually. We've been having a lot of those virtual calls, virtual team meetings, getting projects done. So the answer is yes. Essentially, a virtual culture is possible. We are clear, living, and breathing examples of that. But the question that we really need to be asking ourselves is, can a virtual culture thrive? It's one thing to get along and to get work done the way that it's been done, but are you innovating? Are you taking risks? Are your people bringing the best to the table every single day? And this is a question that we haven't, I feel, fully encapsulated as organizations now shifting to this virtual workplace culture, because we haven't been able to clearly define what thriving can look like in this space. We are so used to seeing each other, having that water cooler talk, brainstorming ideas, feeding off each other's energy. But with us now being all virtual, how are we able to make that all come alive? How are we able to pivot and shift to ensure that the culture we once had within four walls can now live anywhere around the world with people all over the world and different backgrounds and diversities and thought patterns? It can be very exciting, but it can also be very scary as well. So we're going to go down this rabbit hole a little bit, and we're going to talk about how we can create not only a virtual culture, but how we can make sure that it thrives. So when it thrives, or you look to create a culture that thrives, it really all depends on the organization itself. So say we're going to create a virtual culture is not something that is an easy feat, because just because you are quote unquote online doesn't mean that you have a culture. Because remember, a culture is the attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, the values, the attitudes of the people who make up the organization. And so if you haven't been able to fully identify that prior to the pandemic, you need to be able to now be able to understand, take that step back and say, what are we really trying to create now with everybody being at home? What are we really trying to do to bring people together, and not just bringing them together through an online platform, but bringing them together in a way that they can relate, they can understand, they can have empathy, they can truly connect in the way that they did once upon a time in the office. And the organizations that are just being stagnant with their culture haven't really taken that leap and really taken that bold step to say, we are going to redefine what culture means for this organization. For gone long are the days where we were all together once upon a time ago. Let's close that chapter, and let's now really focus on why we are here, how we are going to make this place really be an amazing representation of everything that we are, and let everyone feel psychologically safe to bring their best to the table. The organizations that are truly taking that step, that are truly looking at ways of how to bring the best out of their people, to make their work from home situations as comfortable as possible, to make them as energetic and thriving as possible, are the organizations that are going to lead us from 2021 and beyond. And you can look at, there's tons of examples out in the news of organizations that are really trying to drive and push people back into the office, but it makes you wonder why. Why can we not thrive in a virtual environment? Why do we need to now be back and constricted to the disruption that we are now in, instead of leveraging the advantages and the opportunities that the virtual work from home environment has now granted us? So I encourage all of you, grab the bull by the horns, create that virtual culture that is going to be second to none, and don't just survive it, but thrive it. So virtual versus in person. These are some of a lot of the ideations that come out of, virtual versus in person. And so when I'm speaking with my clients, they'll say, we need you back into the office. These are the reasons why. One, feeding off of energy. So when you're virtual, you need to be more expressive. It's hard to see what someone is thinking or feeling or interpreting their body language if you're looking at them through a screen. And so when you're physical, you can read that body language, you can hear their tonality better, you can see how they're fidgeting, you can see if they're really paying attention or if they're off in outer space. And so we get that a lot, like, oh, there's just no energy, it's very blah. But I tell you, when you create the right virtual culture, the energy radiates to the screen. And so it's up to now the leaders and the managers and the employees, everybody, to really start to take that approach to understanding this is our world. We now need to make sure that we're injecting the elements that we want to sustain communication, openness, empathy, connectivity, and make that come alive in a virtual setting. Next, idea generation. So virtually, it can be challenging to get a lot of people on a call to talk about a new idea, to talk about a project, to talk about, a new idea to increase revenue on the bottom line by 10%. Because already, when we're physically, people were talking over one another. Maybe one person was on their laptop, somebody else was driving the conversation. It can be really all over the place. And now virtually, yes, you physically have everybody in the same spot, or virtually, but are they really paying attention? Are they really in the moment with you? So are you really getting the best ideas if you're not feeding off of the energy and the ideas that are coming to the table? Next is connectivity. In virtual, you feel that that human factor is missing. It feels so robotic. It feels like I'm just staring at that little dot with the green light and I'm not really looking at people. I'm not really giving the sense of connectivity or people really vibing with what I'm saying. So I don't know if I'm speaking to a crowd of 1,000 or just speaking to myself. And so it can feel very lonely. And when you're physical, you can pick up vibes, you can pick up that energy, and that really then either encourages you to continue speaking and continuing to go on the wavelength that you're going, or it can be a signal to you to kind of slow it down, or you're kind of going in the wrong direction. But what's important is that we need to make sure that that human element or the lack thereof doesn't stop us from making sure that our employees and our teams are bringing their best to the table. So we have to be creative and we have to find new ways to engage them. We have to find new ways to make sure that they feel involved and key to the conversation. And then next is thoughtfulness. So when we're virtual, we need to pay close attention to when someone is in need, because again, we're not seeing them on a regular basis. So if we're feeling like somebody is withdrawing, if we're feeling like someone's in a rut, if we're feeling like someone just isn't really connecting, we really need to pay attention and we really need to put our energies to ensure that we're focusing to make sure that that person is okay. Versus physically, we can tell based on their body language, we can see the expressions on their face, we can understand, okay, this person is in need of something, let's check in on them. So you can see that from the virtual versus the physical, there are drastic differences of how we need to interact with one another. And we now in this space need to relearn what different things can be, but have the same impact as if we were in the present. So the biggest caveat in the examples that I just went through is that it takes more time and effort. It's not that being virtual has its limitations. Being virtual has taken away the limitations and has allowed us to explore what our organization and what our teams can look like literally in a global lens, but in a way that we have been challenged before. We don't have the luxury of being in person where we can hear the joy in someone's voice, we can hear the disappointment in someone's body language. So we really need to take the time, slow down, and put that effort that maybe we were relying on based on the body and based on different elements in the workplace, and really focus on that virtual element. For example, if we're in a team meeting, who's the one that's speaking up the most? Who's being quiet? Who you normally know would be the one raising their hand and bringing all the ideas to the table? Who's not really present? Maybe they're looking at other tabs on their screen. Maybe they have their family members over. So we need to, as leaders, really focus and hone in and take the time and the effort to make sure that our teams are present and help them to be present. Ask them thought-provoking questions, put them on the spot, make sure everyone is coming prepared to the meetings so that they can contribute. We need to reorganize, we need to reset the standard of what meetings and projects and brainstorming looks like so that our teams can come prepared to engage. Before, that wasn't a necessity because we had all these other factors and facets to feed off of, but now we have to make it intentional. The body language is its own language. They say language is over 70% our body versus the words we say. And when we're only being seen from the neck up, that limits what our body is telling you as part of our conversational mannerisms. And so we've leaned on the mechanics of communication to the point that other modes of communication are like foreign languages because we're so used to our body doing so much of the talking for us. So we've been forced to have a new language put upon us where we need to be more expressive, we need to be more communicative, we need to be more intentional to ensure that we are communicating and creating the culture virtually that we want to see with our employees all on board. And so that has been, I think, a lesson that everyone has had to learn, but the organizations that have been able to do it and do it in a way that has not allowed them to miss a beat have been the ones to say, listen, we're going to take a step back. We're going to make sure that you are okay first. We're going to make sure that you have all your needs met. We're going to make sure that you are as comfortable as possible and make sure that you can take the time to focus on the tasks at hand, whether that be the pandemic, moving, dealing with family members, dealing with your own mental health. And then once your employees have taken that time to really be able to focus in, take care of what they needed to take care of, they're able to come back to the conversation much more engaged, much more a part of what is going on in this new virtual workspace. And so when we're dealing from body language to virtual communication, again, we need to be that much more intentional because our bodies aren't going to be the ones speaking for us. We need to use our own words, our own communication tactics to ensure that people are very clear on what we mean, what we intend to say, on the actions they need to take, on next steps, because our bodies are no longer part of the equation from that perspective. And so for example, having difficult conversations, those were challenging because it was a way of telling somebody some critical feedback that we wouldn't have to do it often. But now we're doing those types of conversations all the time because we're in a virtual setting. So it's so important that we understand the more practice you have in this space, the better you will be for it because your communications will be clear, your intentionality will be clear, and then your culture and your employee engagement will automatically more have a positive uptick because it has that more structured framework and clarity around it. So it's so important that we understand that all these things, all the changes we're seeing, all have repercussions, and we have to manage those as well as manage our expectations. So let's take a step back and think about culture. So organizational culture represents the collective values, beliefs, principles, and organizational members. It influences the way we interact, the context within which knowledge is created, and the way we share or don't share knowledge. So when we're in a physical setting, we did this organically, where we would share, we would talk, we would meet, we would strategize and really come together because that's what human beings do. We come together in colonies. And what's important is that when you take that physical space away, the way that we are so used to maneuvering and managing those isms that we do just habitually now become very convoluted. And so the way that we now interact seems so formal with the screen and with us now having to set a meeting every time we want to talk to someone or we want to share knowledge or share updates, but it's the way that we work with the tools that we have, whether it identifies as formal or informal. And so it's important that in this virtual space, and as you're starting to create this new virtual culture, you need to set the parameters of what formal versus informal means, versus conversation versus what's a meeting versus a non-meeting, a protocol versus a non-protocol, because we did it in a way in an environment that served the purpose of its time, and we now need to deconstruct it and rebuild that again. But we do that with the organizational values, beliefs, and principles of all our organizational and collective members. So it's not that the core and the crux of the culture is changing. It's that we're shifting our cultures virtually to make room for this new environment that we're in so that the culture can continue to thrive and adapt in this new mode. So we need to shift how we interact, create, and share knowledge. The way that we would go about connecting with one another, feeding off the energy, sharing knowledge, growing out a team or project, it's changed. It's vitally changed. So the way that I would normally connect with you in person on a stage with lights and a microphone, it's different now. I'm in my home and it's a different environment. But if I understand that the culture of the well-being and the enthusiasm and the collectiveness and the trust that we once had is still there, I'm going to start feeling comfortable and I'm going to make sure that I'm bringing my best foot forward. So once we understand how all that has come together, we just need to shift how we interact, create, and share the knowledge so that we're not missing out on the key elements that allow the organization to be the best that it truly can be. So how do we shift using virtual principles? We interact, we create knowledge, and we share knowledge. So let's look at one of these a little bit deeper. So interacting, we need to agree on a shared knowledge. What does that mean? So what tools are we going to be using for quick questions and interactions? What tools are we going to be using for more formal meetings or more project-based principles? Let's state what those are. Do I pick up the phone to call you? Do I send you a direct message? Do I send you an email? You know, what does this all look like? And the reason that you want to create a shared language is that once everybody's on the same page, communication is going to start flowing a lot more simpler. Things will not fall through the cracks, and you'll be able to really hone in on what is important. Next is you need to create a cadence and a rhythm. So those weekly meetings, make sure they're still on the books. Make sure that you're meeting and connecting with your team one-to-one. Now, it doesn't need to be on a virtual, it can be a phone call. Maybe it's virtual text, whatever that is for you, but creating a cadence and a rhythm so that your team doesn't lose that pattern of what is going on, the consistency of communication, that's going to be absolutely vital. Next is we need to be disciplined. It's easy to not, keep those meetings on the calendar. It's easy to let those go. So we need to make sure that we're disciplined, we're following up, and that we're having those touch points because we need to make sure communication is A1. Next is we need to create knowledge. So any screen can be a classroom. If we want to make our engagements more interesting, let's take them outside. Let's take them to other locations. Let's invite other people who might be able to add value to the conversation. We don't need to be stuck just because we are stuck to a screen. So create and be thinking outside of the box is going to be very pivotal. Have innovation days. So instead of every day just being the regular roll call that we say, why don't we have a day where we just pick a problem and we figure out our own solutions to it, and we create and we brainstorm and we bring our best ideas to the table. That helps us to create new knowledge, to share stories, to learn, and then be able to then further share it with others. And then your network is your net worth. Let's make sure that we're networking with our company. We need to get outside of the bubble of just working with our team. There are incredible teams out there and incredible people that need to know what we know, and vice versa. So let's have a day where we do maybe a mixed virtual coffee and we're able to meet, people from the accounting department, the HR, the systems, the engineering, the creative department, and we're able to learn and be able to appreciate the amazing talent that's in the organization. So it's important that networking and still making those times to communicate and network, absolutely vital. And then let's go to sharing knowledge. So let's use different brainstorming techniques. Let's get creative and identify other ways we can create new ideas. Maybe it's doing thought bubbles or different brainstorming techniques that allow us to think outside of the way that we would do something, but get a different result that will allow us to have bigger and innovative ideas. So when we're doing this, we're not restricted to a room. If you think better outside, go outside. If you think better being in home, go to a spot in the high area of your house that allows you to generate those ideas better. But have those systems in place that allow you to brainstorm, get creative, and not feel so restricted. Another thing could be teach the teacher. We have so much collective knowledge in our own teams that we need to be sharing. So maybe we need to teach each other a subject or a topic and be the teacher for the day. And maybe that's going to implement something with a new project or a new initiative. But whatever that thing might be, we're sharing knowledge, we're building each other up, and we're doing it in a way that is fun, innovative, and easy, because there is so much amazing talent that you can't tell me there isn't one thing that someone else can't learn. And then what's the bug / the big miss? We've all made mistakes in our lives, whether it was work, personal, and we should be able to talk about it and share and have empathy and be able to learn. And so whether you're more on the tech side and you want to share stories about how you made a massive error in a piece of code, or maybe you missed a big thing in a project, let's share and connect. Let's take those learnings, share them so everybody can learn, and start to have the appreciation for everybody for what they do and what they bring to the table. So a formula for a successful shift: you have to slow down to speed up. Whenever there's a change, it's going to be hard to adapt. So it's important that we're taking the time to set the right principles, set the right rhythm and cadence, and then once everybody's on the same page, then it's off to the races. Next, we need to communicate a charter and start to speak the same language. We need to make sure that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities, what the new cadence of communication is going to be, and how we're going to be able to relate and connect with one another. Maybe not everybody starts at the same hours, for example. Maybe there's a group that starts at 9 and a group that starts at 11 because of other obligations. We need to be as flexible as this current situation has put on us in order to get the best from our teams. Because when we were doing that, we're putting our people first, which is all about the culture we want to create. Don't overuse your tools. Get creative. We don't need to be in front of a screen all the time. We can text, we can send email, we can pick up the phone and have an old-fashioned phone call. There's so many ways that we can still connect and communicate without having to sit in front of a screen. So don't feel like you're being locked down because of that. Use it as an opportunity to explore new ways in order to get your message across. And then remember, we are humans first. We are flesh and blood. We have thoughts and ideas and fears and happinesses all bottled up into one. So let's not shut that part of us down, but let's bring that to the table. Let's be authentic and let's show that we truly care. Because if our culture is about the values, behaviors, principles, and actions of our collective people, then we need to care about the whole being and not just one aspect of that individual. Adapt or get left behind. This is so critical. As an organization, you need to understand that if we do not adapt to this virtual environment that we are in, the organization is going to get left behind. Your competitors who do adapt, who do take that forward step, are the ones that are going to get more market share. They're going to get the best talent. They're going to increase their bottom line, and they're going to grow and get more profitable. Whereas organizations that do not adapt will get left behind, and they won't be able to be sustainable or keep up with the rapid pace of change. And it is a change. That is very evident, but we need to continue. We are doing everything we can to streamline and be able to adapt with our cultures in a way that shifts our ideas forward while bringing everybody along for the journey. Thank you so much for this time to talk about shifting cultures virtually. I hope everybody had some key takeaways. We're now going to open it up to questions and answers. If you want to reach out to me to connect, please don't hesitate to email me at Alysha@cultureshifthr.com, and I look forward to connecting further.
Thank you, Alysha. A lot of what you have said today resonates so much with me as we have completely shifted to virtual work only. So there are some very good suggestions we can use in the future. Thank you so much. We have received quite a number of questions and some come from socials, and I'm going to read the socials first. And here comes the first one. How do we avoid screen fatigue when we are all working virtually?
That is a great question. So one thing that I work with my clients to implement is actually having no screen days. So it's days where, or sorry, not no screen days, meetings, no meetings. So one day every 2 weeks, it's no meetings. So it's a time to catch up on work. It's a time to, just get ahead, go through notes, kind of recharge for the week. And there's no meetings that day. So, and it's what's really great about it is it's company wide. So it's not like you're not doing meetings and then another group is and you're missing out or things aren't going or aren't getting progressed. But it's across the board, no meetings unless it's absolutely mission critical or something urgent is come up. But by doing that, you're giving everybody that rest they need, that break. And it really just helps to level set because it can be exhausting, absolutely, being in front of a screen for more than 8 hours a day. So having no screen meetings is very key, and making that policy organizational wide as well is very important.
Good points, Alysha. And the next one, how do organizations consistently keep virtual culture and engaging experience?
That's a really good one. I think it's important that when you're when you're looking to create an engaging culture, you need to be able to adapt it to where your employees are at. So in the beginning, I know a lot of my clients were doing, virtual game night and yoga and virtual cooking and having all these activities, which are awesome initiatives. And I do encourage those types of community types of social initiatives that help keep everyone connected on a more personal level. But we have to meet everybody where they're at. Not everybody is interested in those types of more engaging types of activities. So what are other ways that we can engage our staff? Maybe it's providing them an opportunity to get access to a book library, a virtual book library. Maybe it's them wanting to take an online class or course, or maybe it's them, doing something else virtual that allows them to get a new perspective. But I think it's having different opportunities and different varieties of types of engagement so that it's understanding that it's not a one size fits all, that employees engage differently depending on what they're going through, the time of year, things that are happening. So it's important that as leaders, we understand what that looks like and create different options that could fit the variety that they're looking for.
Okay, thanks. We have more questions. I think we have time only for one more answer. So I'm just going to ask, how can we keep a culture ongoing if we have a high number of employees leaving the company and then a high number of new employees coming into the company?
That's a great question. So it's important with culture, just in general, when you're experiencing a lot of turnover, is that we need to instill the right values and principles for new hires from day one. And it's not just onboarding where, you go through the orientation deck and policies and procedures and all that kind of standard things. But at every opportunity for the next 3 to 6 months, we need to be repeating what the values are. We need to be talking about what that looks like in terms of how to show up, how we incorporate our values on a regular basis, how we continue to support and be accountable to one another. So by doing that and reinstating that through meetings, communications, interactions, that's how you're going to instill those types of values within your new hires. And then at the same time with your employees that have decided to, leave the organization, to understand that any historical knowledge is captured appropriately in the right ways and documented so that anybody coming back can make sure that they can pick up where that person left off.
Thank you so much, Alysha. I think Berkun is now taking over.
Yeah, it's me, Alysha. I told you your name is fantastic. Your session was phenomenal. So thank you so much for presenting at Valo Fest. On behalf of the team that I'm representing, a big congrats, a big thank you. You had a lot of questions and I think people were interested in what we are talking. Hopefully we will see you next year again at Valo Fest. Again, merci beaucoup, kitos. So next one, we have a small break so we can refill coffee and our teas. And my hands-on producer Ilya will show us a small video and then we will go next with the Women in IT Network. So Ilya, take it away.
In a thriving digital workplace, access to your content in multiple apps is vital. These are often stored across different locations, which at times can cause confusion. Imagine a world where all communications, collaboration, and co-innovation happens in one location. Introducing Valo Connect. Valo Connect enables you to focus on the things that really matter. Intranet, pages, business apps, websites, and even custom-built apps designed specifically for your business needs. Whatever it is that you use in your digital workplace, Valo connects them, helping your team to stay informed with everything from internal communications to industry news, helping them to locate and edit files and documents without jumping between multiple sources. Everything is better together, under one roof. It's time to make the connection and bring all your tools together within Microsoft Teams. Build the digital workplace of your dreams. In any business, it's easy for your ideas to be forgotten, sometimes almost as soon as they appear. But what if there was a place to share your ideas directly with your colleagues? Introducing Valo Ideas. Valo Ideas is where your thoughts come to life. They can be discussed, accessed, and even promoted within your business. Sally and her team use the platform to showcase new ideas with their colleagues around the globe. These ideas can be supported using the Like feature and give other team members the ability to add their thoughts too, all from within Microsoft Teams. Valo Ideas uses campaigns to keep ideas organized and ensure that they are only seen by the appropriate teams. Using analytics, it's possible to view trends, filter ideas by type, and even check out the top contributors. Valo Ideas delivers an experience that empowers teams across all organizations to ideate and co-innovate towards the dream workplace.
Close collaboration with other companies and their employees is vital for any kind of business. These contacts often require access to your resources, and granting permission in a secure way can be time-consuming. Introducing Valo Entrance. Whether your business uses Valo Extranet or out-of-the-box SharePoint to distribute information and materials, Valo Entrance makes it simple to share them with your external users safely. You can map available resources to users in a simple way, thanks to access units. Whether you need to share sites or groups, Valo Entrance enables you to easily grant and control access rights for individual users or larger groups of people. The handy self-service registration portal takes the strain out of substantial manual work, allowing you to focus on sharing information with your most important stakeholders safely, whilst Valo takes care of the rest. Valo Entrance, your doorman to VIP access management in Microsoft 365.
I am Mark Whitmire, and I'm Vice President of Digital Solutions for Catapult.
I'm Eric Russell, Product Owner for Fuse at Catapult.
We are based in the U.S. We've got customers in almost every state, and headquarters is in Austin. We're about 7 months into our Valo partnership. We've got 13 under contract today, and we think we'll be around 30 for the first year. Being a Valo partner has had a big impact on us. It has really helped us be more competitive. The investment Valo's made has really has made a big difference for what we bring to our customers, and so our growth has accelerated because of that. And it's helped us focus on what's in our wheelhouse, which is the services.
Our favorite aspect of the partnership is the people. We found Valo to be very easy to work with, very, very responsive whenever we need support. We were able to hit Premium Partner in less than 6 months because of the richness of the product. We had an existing customer base, and it allowed us to bring a quality product to them to solve their business problems. I feel like the Valo partnership, it's been very much two ways. We've gotten a lot of support from Valo, and I like to think that we're supporting their business as well. Yeah, in terms of support, I think Valo has been very responsive, whether that's through their support team or through their marketing team or even our partner manager. The support's been great, and it's been very responsive.
You know, I think the key thing in deciding to become a Valo partner was, first of all, the richness of the product, of the feature set. I think secondly, that we felt like it was priced fairly for the market demand, and then the people really put it over the top.
Okay, 3 videos, and I'm feeling nostalgic because we can't travel anymore. We can't go and see your beautiful partners. But hey, let's hope with all the vaccination we will soon be able to travel. But now we have Christine Bonga, which sounds really French, and I'm from Belgium, which is a neighbor of France. And Christine is a Microsoft Channel Advisor and advocate for women in technology. She is a director of the WIT Network. Hi, Christine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining. It's an honor for us to join, actually to be joined by you, which is actually the director of Women in IT. And honestly, that's something I really appreciate with women like you, with Valo, and working together to prove that actually Women in IT is something in the community. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we are so thrilled to have Valo as a corporate member of the WIT Network. We've been working together with Annie to really connect our organizations and do exactly what you just said, support women in technology. There's so much work still to be done, as I'm sure everyone here knows, reading everything in the news, and especially with COVID, you know, a lot of progress for bringing more women into technology and more women into leadership positions. We've taken a giant step back. So we still have more work to do, and we're only going to do it working together. So I'm just so thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting us, and thanks for a great partnership.
And you can always count on me and on the whole crew at Valo to support you in your initiatives. That being said, it's time. It's your time. You have a couple of minutes. Go for it. Enjoy the stage.
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, hello, everybody. I am Christine Bongard, and my name is French. You were right. So my origins do go back to France, but I'm based in the United States, and I have the pleasure of serving as president and co-founder of the WIT Network. It's been an amazing couple of years working with the WIT Network, and I also, in my full-time job, I am the Strategic Alliance Director for Optimizely. I don't know if any of you have heard of EpiServer, but we just merged with Optimizely and have taken a new name, so that's very exciting there. I'm in New Jersey, and I've been involved supporting women in technology for really about 10 years. 2.5 years ago, we just saw the need was really growing and growing to find ways to support women in the workplace. So we started the WIT Network. It's a nonprofit organization, and it's a membership organization. So actually, this slide is out of date. I think we are almost, we're climbing very close to 7,000 members right now, and we're in 61 countries. And so what's really exciting for me is when I speak to women all over the world. You know, I'm connecting with women in Egypt and in Israel and in Australia and Singapore and all over the United States and EMEA, and all the women have the same concerns, right? They need support, they need networking connections, they want education, they want opportunities for training, they need sponsorship. And it really doesn't matter, you know, where they live, the need is all the same. And so we're here to try to bring everybody together to create more programs to help support and advance women in technology. So we have a whole bunch of programming, because what we learned is that, you know, people need different kinds of support. People like to learn differently. People are looking for different things to help their career. Some people are interested in webinars and learning. So we have an entire We've Got WIT webinar series with 3 to 4 webinars a month on professional development, career journeys, inspiration, and also WIT Wellness, which we started actually right before COVID hit, and it turned out to be perfect timing because it's a whole series based on, you know, what women need to do to try to help with work-life balance, transitioning, and grounding, putting yourself first, you know, things of that nature. It's been very, very popular, and we're actually getting a lot more requests right now for anything related to mental health and what we can do, you know, to help support women with that as well. Some people join the WIT Network because they want to connect with other people. They want to meet people, whether they want to network for their business, whether they want to meet new friends, whether sometimes they're in travel, they're in positions that travel a lot, and they want to meet women all around the world. And they connect with me personally and say, hey, I'm traveling to this country. Do you have people in the WIT Network that I might be able to meet with? You know, I'm going to be alone, and it'd be nice to have dinner or coffee, you know, with like-minded people. And so we have lots of different ways for people to connect one-on-one or in small groups. We have local communities all around the world. We have about 45 local communities. Now, they're not meeting right now in person. We had to take a break on that, but they are doing virtual meetups. And so that's a way to connect with people who are local to you. We also have global virtual mentoring circles, and those are awesome. And we do them in 3 time zones, and they're an opportunity for people to participate in small groups and talk about topics of the day, right? We rotate different topics, whether they're leadership topics, whether they're WIT wellness topics, or even things personal development, and sometimes even current events. And so, you know, if you really want to meet people from around the world, those are great events to do as well. We just started, we had a tea time, you know, everybody said, oh, we have all these events where we're learning and it's active. What about just having an event to connect with one another, share a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, have a glass of wine? And so we're trying to put a little bit more of those casual type meetups where, you know, unfortunately virtual, but you know, people can continue to meet. And then we have a lot of education. And so, you know, about a year ago, it occurred to me reading all the research that comes out from Gartner and IDC and McKinsey, you know, saying that the opportunities for women where we're least represented are, you know, in technical roles, as well as, you know, in leadership and growing leadership positions. So I thought, what can we do to try to help that? How can we be part of, you know, fixing that problem? So we got sponsors initially from Microsoft, who we're so grateful for. They're our founding sponsor, Gabriella Schuster and her team. But then other companies also started to support. And so we put together these cohorts, these learning cohorts, and the one is Emerging Leaders, a leadership cohort, and another is Azure Fundamentals. And I'll talk about those in a little bit more in an upcoming slide. But they've been wildly successful. I think we've put through almost 200 women through the leadership program now, and we have about 150 women through the Azure Fundamentals. And really the idea is just, you know, to get people activated and start, you know, considering maybe technical careers where, you know, they hadn't thought of that before. We did a survey of the women who were coming into the Azure Fundamentals course, and we said, why are you joining? What are you interested in? And the women said, well, first of all, everybody, all of the training, technical training opportunities in my company seem to go to men, and my management never asks me if I want to participate in it and if I might want to learn the technology. And so it's like, oh my gosh, ugh. So, you know, and also the women were saying they wanted to learn, you know, with like-minded women in their cohort and not be the only woman, you know, in a class of 50 men. So those programs have been really successful. And we also have, we're trying to put together, you know, change. The best way for change to come about is through storytelling. And so we're really doing our best to try to collect stories from all over the industry, right? Women that are, we did a couple of ebooks. We did one ebook that was all about women lighting the way during COVID, and how women, these particular women and their leadership, you know, really changed the outcome for their company, their employees, and their customers during COVID, right? And we tried to celebrate that. We also did an ebook with Jabra on women working remotely, you know, during all of this. What are the needs of women while they're working remotely, juggling the family in the background while they're, you know, working? And so, you know, really just real great, real life stories trying to, you know, share with others. And then I mentioned the mentoring circles. We also have an app, a modern mentorship app for those who are looking to either be a mentor or be mentored. And it's a modern way to connect with mentors based on, you know, shared interests. I talked about the leadership program. I do want to say that this is a certificate program. If any of you are a member of the WIT Network, or you do become a member of the WIT Network, this is a wonderful program you get to participate in. It's a $1,200 US program that you get to participate in for free because of the sponsorships from Microsoft and the other tech companies. And so, and we made a pledge, you know, in talking about current events and, you know, everything that's happening. When Black Lives Matter, you know, was happening in June, we had to stop to say, what are we doing? Even a nonprofit that is here to support women, we still had to stop and say, what are we doing that is not supporting, you know, changing to have better results for people of color? And so we've set a goal that 40–50% of all of our programming will be with people of color participants. And I'm happy to report that since then, you know, we have met that goal. But it's very important that all groups, no matter what, you know, really take a hard look and put metrics in place to make change for the greater world. And then I told you about the cloud power. This is the Azure training that we did. Same thing, this is a $1,000 course that is offered, you know, as part of being a part of the WIT Network. And I do want to note here, if you see on this slide, you know, when we talked about women learning as a group, you know, a lot of the women wanted that, and we're finding that they're having an 80% pass rate. This is actually a very difficult Microsoft certification. And we're finding that they have an 80% pass rate because they're doing it together. The women are helping each other in the cohort. They're doing their lab work together. They're doing study tests, prep tests together, and they're helping each other. And look, 80% pass rate over the industry norm of 40 to 50%. That's the power of women coming together and helping each other. I talked about the mentoring circles. This is our tribute mentoring app. I talked about the local communities. On our website, you can see where all of the communities are located to see if there might be a community near you. And lastly, I just want to go over, we have a couple of really great events coming up. I mentioned Gabriella Schuster is one of our founding sponsors. We're so grateful to her. This is going to be such a great webinar. I was having a conversation with her, and she was telling me that she wrote this white paper for her staff, people who worked for her, and all about creative ways to grow your career within your organization, right? And it paralleled to her life progress and her career path that she took, and how she specifically navigated around the company and made choices that she knew would help her in the future. And she's going to share that with everybody. So that's going to be really, really great. And then this is the first time we're doing this, and I'm so excited. We're going to do a luncheon laugh where we're going to have a comedian from Second City come on and just during the lunch period, just make everybody laugh and, make everybody smile and let everybody take an hour out, just to have a good time. And then we have a leadership workshop coming up, which is going to be really, really great. Nancy is a wonderful speaker from a CEO forum, and she's going to give, some really great leadership tips and skills for everybody. And then this is under the WIT Wellness. We have work-life integration. And, even more important now, right, with everybody, we're going a year into this COVID situation. And so this is really great, how to draw, the boundaries between your work life and your personal life, which we all seem to be blurring those lines very much lately. And we have corporate memberships. Valo is a corporate member. And so if you're out there and you're like, you know what, this looks really great, I'd love to talk to my company about this, please reach out to me, and I'll have some contact info in a minute. And I'll be happy to talk to you about it. We have individual memberships for people to join. And then we also have corporate memberships for all different size companies. And you can find us here. You can email in at Women at the WIT Network. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Christine Bongard. I'll be happy to talk to you about, any of the work that we're doing and all the fun things about being a part of the WIT Network. So thanks for having me. I hope I was in my time frame. I could talk all day about this, so it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you so much. That was a really inspirational session. So thank you so much. It's really, really great work and important work that women in IT are doing. So we are so happy to continue sponsoring this very important work.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we are going to have the beach stretch for remote workers with Stephany Alvarez.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephany Alvarez. I'm here to guide you through a little mid-stress workout or stretch. And I hope you guys are having a great time. But for now, please enjoy the scenery and let's get our groove on. So, if you're at home, which you are, you must have a book, or you might just yoga or Pilates at home if you have a block. It's a great time to take it out. You can use a book as well or a pillow. And it's just going to guide you, it's going to help you to unfold, to open up your chest, kind of release your hips. And at the end, we're going to do a little bit of activation for your core. So like that, you're all set for your next activity. So to begin, you're going to walk aside. see. You might have some furniture around you, I suppose. But we're going to bring that knee in and forward, and you can bring your knee down. This is how to use your prop or pillow for your knee. If you have too much pressure on your knee, it could hurt your patella. So you can bring your block down and instead of eating the pressure off of your hips. Take a big breath, bring your hands to your hips, breathe and relax. You don't have to go hard. I do this stretch, I do this routine almost every day. It helps me wake up and it helps me realign myself. So I don't really think to go hard. I just like to feel like I stretch, like I'm making know what I'm doing. And a lot of times people will go and you go to deep stretch, not necessary. You want to relax and enjoy this time. Downtime. Computer time, alright? So go back. Walk out. Go back to the down dog. The other one. Make sure you don't hit anybody, any members of the family that are around you. Get out and forward. Especially sitting on your a desk, chair. It's not very good for your health too. For your psoas. It's a great way to reset and open up both the opposite extremes. I might have some water coming out of my nose. Just this morning. It's increasing weekly a lot for everybody. Okay. Now, go back. Check out again. Track it all over. We're gonna go into pigeon. Okay. Pigeon is one of my favorite stretches, especially for my glutes and my hips. I'm gonna slide my left leg forward. It's too hard for you. Again, you have a book or block. You can put it right under your hips, and it will ease the pressure off. And you get a nice stretch. You don't have to go hard. You don't have to go to any extreme. Nice. Okay. Like even bring my head down. Take 2 big breaths. If you're flexible and you know what you're doing, yogis and Pilates athletes out there. I'm being told I need to speak louder, so I'm going to be yelling a little bit. I'm not yelling at you though, I'm just trying to make you listen to me, okay? Great. So, for all our expert yogis out there, you can bring your leg up. Now you get a bigger stretch on your quad. And for all you expert level, you tie your hands up and just smile and take deep breath. Now release. And we'll do the other side, nice and easy. Go back into downward dog. And yeah. Take deep breath. Make yourself full, block, pillow, sit on the pillow, sounds good. Go down. Do a big deep breath right here. Another one. I'm getting really hot. I won't be right too. Moving. Body. you stretch one leg out. And I don't necessarily want to go all the way to my toe. You just come all the way to my side, using my knees, take a big deep breath, and exhale. If you feel like you can go further, you can start the quads and let your body take you there. Don't pull yourself there, just let your body take you there. One more breath. Go to the other side. Breath. Ooh, it's gonna rain. Hopefully you guys have some fun wherever you are. Great. Okay, now that we opened up our hips, we're going to do a couple of exercises to engage our core, okay? And our core. It's going to give us a little bit more energy for the next round. So you can take your block or your fork, you can put it between your legs. And lie down, rest your head. Take a couple of big deep breaths here. Now, we're going to squeeze our knees together. And after squeezing, keep the tension. We're going to roll our hips. We're going to bring our belly button down to the ground, roll, and lift. And we're going to breathe. Exhale, come back down. This is very good for your lower body. The balance of your pelvic floor. This realigns your pelvic floor. It's very good for if ever you're sitting awkwardly or you're always rotated in a certain direction. This is going to help you. It's an exercise I do almost every day. So let's do that 10 times. Breathe. Roll your pelvic floor. Bring your belly button down to the ground. Up and down. Breathe. Belly button down to the ground. Up. Breathe. Again. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How much time do I have left? 5 minutes. Alright, we're going to keep working out for 5 minutes. I'm breaking a sweat. I hope you guys are breaking a sweat at home. We're going to do another set of these, okay? Please. Bring your belly button down to the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, we're gonna just sit down on legs. It's really nice when your hips is gonna open up. You're gonna sit here for 2 deep breaths. Take deep breath. I feel like this is a really good practice. You can always put bolsters or pillows on the side of your knees. One more deep breath. Now we're going to go and do a little bit of abs. And then we're going to stretch and open our chest. And then we're going to take a big deep breath. And Shabbat. And we're going to hold plank for 30 seconds, okay? Walk to your elbows. If you can't do 30 seconds, you can do intervals of 10 seconds. I'll tell you at the 10 seconds. That's 10 seconds, you can take a break for 5. And come up for another 10. And up for another 10 seconds. Take a break for 5. And we'll do another 5 seconds. Alright guys, we're going to finish off with a heart opener. Closer for the block right under your shoulder blades. Lie down, take deep breath. And meditate. Breathe. And have a great Valo Fest, everyone.
All right, back to Valo Fest. Well, don't you wish you were on that beach as well? I look out the window here in Montreal and am I unmuted? Yes. Okay.
You're fine.
I'm fine. Excellent.
Yes, you're fine. Yes.
All right. What I wanted to say is I wish I were also on that beach, but I look out the window here in Montreal and it's actually snowing. Yes, it's been snowing today. Imagine that. Anyway, the North American part of ValoFest continues. Europe goes to sleep. North America continues. Thanks to Gökhan for hosting so far. I am taking over the hosting from now on. My name is Juha from the Valo team. And so I am happy to announce the next speaker, which is a very exciting one with an exciting topic. So Ryan Fehr is going to talk about finding and showing gratitude in the digital workplace. So Ryan is an associate professor at the University of Washington. So his research focuses on building more positive relationships at work, with a particular interest in gratitude, compassion, and forgiveness. In other words, soft topics. So very exciting. I'm very excited to wish Ryan welcome. The stage is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get started here. Okay, so thank you all so much for joining me for this, and thank you for that introduction. So when I started my job here at the University of Washington in 2011, one of the first things I noticed in the spring of my first year was the cherry blossoms that we have on campus. And I thought it was really amazing and really lit up the campus. And I always made a point of walking just slightly out of the way to see them. But then a funny thing happened. I started to notice them less and less. And instead, what I started to notice more of was this. And so I actually started to walk out of my way to avoid them. Along similar lines, when a new train station opened up on my campus, I used to really enjoy walking by, and this is the view that I would see of the mountains and the fountain that we have here. But after a while, instead, what I started to notice was this, which is a bunch of geese that are kind of in the way as you walk and make a bit of a mess of things and can be a little aggressive. And if this sounds at all familiar to you, it reflects a common psychological phenomenon called the headwinds versus tailwinds effects. And what this headwinds versus tailwinds effect says is that we pay the most attention to people and things in our lives that make things more difficult and less pleasant, while overlooking the people and things that make our lives easier and more pleasant. So this is why, for instance, we believe that our parents were harder on us than our siblings. It's why we think that people in other careers have it easier than us. It's even why football fans focus on the most difficult matchups in their schedule and think that their schedule is harder than other teams. So for the past few years, I've been studying gratitude and the role that I think it can play to fight this effect. A couple of years ago, Berkeley, the Greater Good Science Center there, did a study that showed that 90% of people agree that gratitude can have a positive impact on our lives. 66% of employees say that they'd leave their job if they didn't feel appreciated, and that number shoots up another 10% for millennials. But at the same time, if you ask people what things are actually like, 60% of people say that they think that society is less grateful than it used to be. Only 10% of employees say that they actually say thank you on a given day. 60% say that they rarely, if ever, express gratitude at work. Kind of a story to illustrate, I think, what's going on here a little bit. Just a few weeks ago, I ordered a sandwich from off of campus here at the University of Washington. And after about a half an hour, the owner of the store called me and said, "I'm sorry, actually, all my delivery people left, so there's no way that I can get this to you." And so I just sort of told him it was all right. And then I paused for a moment and said, "Hey, and I just want to let you know I really, appreciate you and what you're doing, and this must be really difficult. And you're probably getting some customers that are upset at you." And he paused for a moment and he said, "I've been the manager here for a couple of months, and this is the first time that anyone has really paused and taken a few moments to show appreciation for me." So we talked on the phone for about another 10 minutes, which maybe wasn't great for all the other people he had to call. But I think it illustrates the power that gratitude and showing appreciation can have, but also how rare it is. So this kind of leads to this question of, well, why isn't gratitude more prevalent at work? And I think there are at least two reasons for that. Number one is that we have certain beliefs about gratitude's effects. We think that if we show gratitude at work, it's going to say that we're incompetent because we're showing that we needed somebody else's help, or we're too emotional or something like that. Relatedly, we might think that, okay, well, even if I expressed appreciation or showed appreciation to somebody, they're not really going to care. There was a study that was done by a colleague of mine at the University of Chicago that asked people, if you actually express gratitude to somebody, how would they react? And they said, well, I don't think they'd be particularly surprised. They know that I'm grateful for them. I don't think it would really boost their mood very much because they already know what's going on. And honestly, I think it would be kind of awkward. And then they asked people to actually express gratitude, and they found that the recipient was actually much more surprised about why another person felt grateful for them. It boosted the other person's mood more than anticipated, and it wasn't as awkward as anticipated. So there's a bit of a misalignment here in terms of how we predict people are going to react to gratitude versus how they actually do. I think the second reason that gratitude isn't as prevalent at work is that we just don't pay very much attention to it. So when we have gratitude-inducing experiences at work, like somebody helping us, we don't really think about it in terms of gratitude. We don't feel that gratitude. And even if we do feel gratitude, we don't express it because, again, we feel like it's somehow not appropriate at work. So essentially what I'm saying here is I think there's this gratitude gap, and what we need to do is we need to develop some techniques to bridge that gap. And I think there are two fundamental pillars that we can try to develop to live a more grateful life and to bridge this gap between the value that gratitude has and what we actually do at work. There's an inward pillar, which is focused on cultivating a grateful outlook. And then there's a more outward pillar, which is about cultivating a habit of appreciation that's more external. And we'll begin by taking a look at this inward pillar. The first thing that I think we need to do to cultivate a more grateful outlook on our lives is understand the impact of gratitude. If you look at newspaper articles, for instance, on gratitude, you often see headlines like this that say that gratitude is going to make you happier. Gratitude can actually rewire your brain for happiness. But I actually think that this does a bit of disservice to gratitude's actual impact in our lives. And this is kind of what I sometimes call gratitude light. When Cicero said that gratitude was not just the greatest of virtues, but also the mother of all others, I don't think he was just thinking that it's something that makes us happy. Rather, one of the biggest powers of gratitude is that it's actually a path through which we deepen our connections with other people. And so when we think about gratitude and its impact, we should think a little bit less that it's something we do just to feel good about ourselves or about our lives, and more something that we do to strengthen and deepen our connections with other people, which is particularly important at work and particularly important with virtual work where building those connections can be challenging. Last year, I did a study at an organization where people make airline food. So it's actually an assembly line where people put all the food together and then send it out to the airlines. And we assigned half of the factories, we assigned the employees to express gratitude to each other for a week. And then the other factories were our control condition. And what we found was that after just a week of trying to encourage employees to express gratitude to each other, it actually deepened those employees' engagement with their work, and it deepened the extent to which they helped each other. And so this is consistent again with that notion that gratitude, when we bring it into work, helps people see how they're having an impact on others and helps strengthen those connections between individuals. Other related findings to this point show that gratitude increases the patience that we have with other people. In marital relationships, it's been shown to facilitate constructive conversations that the two people have with each other. In organizations, it's even been shown to decrease turnover because it increases the embeddedness that we feel within that organization. So we want to understand the impact and kind of why we're trying to cultivate more gratitude to deepen our relationships. The second thing we can do that you might have heard of is this idea of gratitude journaling, where every other day or so, we take a little bit of time and write down things that we're grateful for in our lives. Now, gratitude journaling works for a few reasons. One of them is that it draws attention to positive events we weren't focusing on. That's kind of that asymmetry I mentioned earlier, where we tend to focus on the things that are difficult in our lives. If left to our own devices, journaling can help balance that out a little bit. It also helps give us a sense of what we want to seek more of in our lives. When we see the things that bring us gratitude, it draws our attention to those things and helps it play a more integral role in our lives, and in that way can help connect us to others. But gratitude journaling needs to be done thoughtfully, it needs to be done the right way. Two recommendations I have on how to do gratitude journaling well. First is to be specific. What you don't want to do is you don't want to just write down, I'm grateful for my spouse. It should be more of a narrative than a set of bullet points. You should write down, I'm grateful for my spouse because, and then write down something that that person did recently that caused you to feel grateful, something positive. Another recommendation is to try to be surprised. You want to try to think creatively when you're doing a gratitude journaling exercise. That might include thinking about painful experiences you've overcome. It might involve thinking not just about who's helped you, so not, my spouse helped me the other day, but also people who have helped those other people. So somebody who helped your spouse, you can think about being grateful for them, and that sort of expands the circle of people for which we feel gratitude. Now, gratitude journaling is not easy. I like to sort of compare it to exercise. If any of you have ever tried running, maybe the first day, you only get a few blocks. It's really difficult and you can't imagine kind of getting over that hump. So some common challenges that people face is they say, it kind of felt weird. I didn't know what to write about. My problems still haven't gone away. And here, what I try to encourage is you want to get through that awkwardness and try it for a week or so to really get used to it, to practice it. And what people often find is that after they've developed a bit of a habit around gratitude journaling for a few days or weeks, that's when the benefits really start to kick in once we become more used to it. And then the third step in cultivating this inward pillar of gratitude, this more grateful outlook, is to scaffold it with other gratitude practices. One of my favorite gratitude practices here is simply having a gratitude conversation. What I mean by that is, let's say you're with your family at dinner at night, and just kind of talk to each other about the things that you're grateful for in your life right now. And that simple act of externalizing gratitude a little bit and having a conversation and bringing it outside yourself can be tremendously impactful. The other thing that we can do to help cultivate this deeper inward sense of gratitude is to also look at this other pillar for living a more grateful life, which is building a habit of appreciation. I really believe that gratitude is most powerful when we bring it outside of ourselves and into our interpersonal relationships. The first step here, I think that's really important when we talk about cultivating a habit of appreciation, is understanding the difference between recognition and appreciation. They're related to each other, but they're different. Recognition is positive feedback based on results and performance. Appreciation instead focuses on a person's value, on who they are. Appreciation isn't just inauthentic recognition. It's saying, hey, maybe you had a tough quarter or a tough year at this job, but we still value who you are. We value you as a person. So let's say that you have 3 employees. One does a great job bringing in revenue for the company. One does an average job. One not so much. When we're talking about recognition programs, of course, the one that brought in the most revenue is going to receive the most recognition. But when we talk about valuing people and cultivating a culture of gratitude and appreciation, we can show everybody that works with us the extent to which we appreciate them and we're glad that they're a part of our team. The second thing that we want to do here in terms of this outward pillar around appreciation is build an appreciation habit. And a way to think around about this is that there are a few different ways that we can show appreciation for other people. The first one is simply words of affirmation, expressing gratitude to other people. One of the more interesting studies in this space shows that you can express gratitude based on a person's virtues, on who they are, or based on the ways that they helped you. Both are great, but gratitude is particularly powerful when we focus on who the person is. So when we frame our gratitude around, well, I'm so grateful to have you as a coworker, you're always so kind and generous and compassionate. When we really focus on who the person is, that's when we really see that gratitude having a deep impact on that other person. The next way we can build an appreciation habit is with quality time. We want to think of if we're actually spending high quality time with the people that we're working with. My colleague Christine Porath, who's at Georgetown, has this 10-5 rule that I really like, which says if you're in a hallway, if you're 10 feet within 10 feet of a coworker, you smile and nod, and if you're within 5 feet of that coworker, you actually say hello to them. In my own office, it makes a really big difference when people are walking by each other in the hallways and they actually say hello to each other. Now, what does that mean when we translate it into a virtual environment? Well, there's a lot to be said with acknowledging everybody that's on a call when that call first starts, saying hello, asking how they're doing, just taking a few moments to cultivate that connection and showing people that they're seen and appreciated can make a really big difference. The third way that we can build this appreciation habit is through acts of service, through actually helping other people. Now, an important distinction here when we talk about acts of service is a distinction between what we call proactive help and reactive help. Proactive help is where you just kind of jump in and help somebody on a task. Reactive help is where before you do that, you take a few moments to ask the person what they actually need and try to say, hey, I'd really like to help you, to make your job easier, to reduce your stress. What can I do to support you? And research shows that that reactive help, which is preceded by taking the time to find out what somebody really needs, makes all the difference in whether or not that help is received, understood, and really helps build a connection between the two people. If you jump in right away without really asking people what they need, they can make all sorts of other attributions about why you're helping them because you don't think they can do it on your own, because you don't think they're competent, whatever. So if we take that time first, that makes all the difference in these acts of service. Now, the last way that we can build an appreciation habit for other people is through tangible gifts. But I want to make an important point here. If you ask people, how do they want to be shown appreciation? For 68% of people, tangible gifts are the least favorite way to be shown appreciation. For only 6% of people are they the favorite. So tangible gifts are fine, and they can be a useful tool in trying to cultivate this habit of appreciation, but you don't want to emphasize it too much. And when you do use tangible gifts, you want to tailor them to the person as much as possible, because it shows that you care and understand about them as individuals. Another thing that we can do to build an appreciation habit, which research suggests is actually even stronger in its effects than gratitude journaling, is writing a gratitude letter to another person. So for us as the writer, writing a gratitude letter, it actually helps us elaborate on our thoughts. It helps us really understand more concretely why we appreciate another person. And it also helps us start trafficking in that language of gratitude and appreciation to make it more top of mind as we go about our day. And then if at all possible, what you want to do with a gratitude letter is give it or send it to the other person, but then actually read it aloud to them. And this can be a really powerful experience, both for the person that wrote the letter and for the person that's receiving the letter. If you write a gratitude letter to somebody and then read it to them, I guarantee you that that's something that that person is going to remember for the rest of their lives. The third step in kind of rounding out this building a habit of appreciation, of bringing it a little more externally, is actually in how we accept gratitude. So what we want to do here is we want to practice accepting gratitude with grace. And a good analogy here is that it's like if somebody gives you a present. When somebody expresses gratitude to us, sometimes what we're inclined to do is say, oh no, I mean, that's great, but you know, hey, I really appreciate you too, and just kind of push it back on them. Well, imagine if that happened when somebody gave you a present for your birthday. You said, oh no, I don't really deserve this present. Here, please, you have a present too, right? Maybe it doesn't make the person who showed you that appreciation or gave you that present feel great. So what we want to practice doing is actually, if somebody tells us that they appreciate us, is simply saying thank you and stopping there. One of my favorite exercises to do with teams is what's called an appreciation circle exercise. And so you have a person who's in the appreciation seat, and then everybody else goes around and spends 1 minute telling that person why they appreciate them. And while they're in the appreciation seat, the only thing that that person can do is just say thank you. So everyone goes around and gives appreciation to that person, and then you rotate through the entire group. I did this exercise recently with a group of government employees in Olympia here in Washington State. It was 8 a.m. Everybody was kind of groggy, but within just a few minutes of starting this exercise, many people were in tears. They were hugging each other because we don't take the time, even if we've worked with somebody for many years, to show that appreciation, to really help somebody understand and see the impact that they've had in our lives. By the way, this is an activity that I've done virtually before and can still work really well in that environment. So if you're looking for a way to bring gratitude into your teams, this appreciation seat exercise can be really effective. A few notes on gratitude in a virtual environment and some things to keep in mind. First is I think that gratitude is more important, not less, in a virtual environment. As I mentioned earlier, I think the real power of gratitude is in cultivating deep and meaningful relationships with other people. And as we all know, that can be challenging to do when we're working in an virtual environment. So recognizing that we need to maybe work a little bit harder to bring gratitude into our teams and our interpersonal connections when they're in a virtual environment is really important. The second thing is we want to try to express gratitude through the richest communication option we have. Because we tend to worry that gratitude expression can be awkward, sometimes we want to push it to more thinner means of communication, like an email. There's nothing wrong with showing gratitude in the email, but if we can express gratitude to somebody while we're on video, verbally, that richer mode of communication is going to make the impact of that gratitude even higher. The third thing I want to mention here is not to leave anyone behind. I did a laboratory study recently with one of my graduate students where we had a research assistant into the lab, and then they were giving this creativity exercise to 2 participants. And it was kind of set up so they performed relatively similarly, but then the research assistant expressed gratitude to one of the participants, but not the other. And the impact of that was amazing. The person who didn't receive any gratitude was far more upset than in a condition where nobody got any gratitude, and said, I never want to work with this other person again. I never want to work with this leader again. They were very upset and ruminated on it for a long time afterward. Because gratitude can be so powerful to receive, if you're excluded from that circle of appreciation, it can be a problem and lead to envy and some interpersonal challenges. So you want to be kind of aware of that and think about, again, building a culture of appreciation where everybody feels that within their team. So now the question is, all right, what do we do next to kind of cultivate gratitude in our lives? And what I like to recommend is this 7-day gratitude bootcamp, because it really starts getting us into this space of feeling gratitude for other people. So on day 1, you do this 3 blessings exercise. And this is a gratitude journaling exercise where you simply write down 3 things that happened to you that day for which you could give another person credit that you're grateful for. Then on the 2nd day, you do a little bit of a different version of a gratitude journaling exercise. This is called To Whom for What, where you think about 3 people you're grateful for in your life and write about why. So here you're focusing on 3 individuals. On day 3, you start bringing it outside of yourself and you have that gratitude conversation that I mentioned earlier, where you have a conversation with a friend or a family member or somebody that you work with, and you just talk about some of the things in your life that you're grateful for. As we continue to bring it outside of ourselves on day 4, this is where you actually take the time to express appreciation to somebody else. So you want to identify a specific person and then express appreciation to them, again, ideally through a rich means of communication, whether it's on camera or in person. Number 5, we do this absence of blessing exercise, and this is where you think about some aspect of your life you're grateful for and write about how things would be without it. There's something very powerful about imagining our lives without something that's valuable to us and we enjoy that really helps cultivate a sense of gratitude for that thing. On day 6, we do this pay it forward exercise. This is where we actually show appreciation to another person through something that we do, such as one of those acts of service or through quality time that we spend with another person. And then on day 7, we take a day of reflection and we kind of write about our experiences over those 6 days. And what we ultimately want to get into a space with is where we have a sense of the ways in which we feel comfortable and authentic in bringing gratitude into our lives. So maybe you feel particularly comfortable with gratitude conversations. Maybe journaling is what really speaks to you. Or maybe it's the expressing of appreciation to other people that you feel is most powerful. But the point is that we find the things that we think we can bring into our daily lives and cultivate a habit around. And then in the weeks moving forward from this boot camp, we build that habit out with these experiences in mind. Okay, so that's it for me, kind of a quick primer on ways to cultivate more gratitude into our lives. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. And if there are any questions, we can start with those.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of allowing ourselves to feel the sense of gratitude and speaking it out as well. As they say, acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. We have a few questions that came in through our socials. So I wanted to start with the first question, and it's what is the best way to get other people to buy into the idea of bringing more gratitude into work?
Yeah, so I think that there's an important subtle distinction here. When we want to encourage organizations, let's say we have a boss or a coworker, want to kind of show them or help them understand the benefits of gratitude at work. There's a risk of going too quickly to saying, hey, this company is going to be more effective if we bring more gratitude into work. I'm a little worried about that because we don't want it to be too instrumental, right? So if employees worry that we're trying to bring gratitude into work just to make them work harder, that's not really the spirit of it, and it's likely to backfire. So instead, what I like to say is, look, if we want to build a culture of deep and meaningful connections with other people, where coworkers feel connected to each other, understand the impact that they're having on each other, then that's what gratitude does, right? So sort of finding that right outcome and saying we're bringing gratitude into the workplace in the interest of cultivating deeper and better relationships with each other. That's a way that's both inspiring and motivating, but also feels authentic to what gratitude is all about.
Thank you. I have another question. Do we have time?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay. Are there any risks or downsides of bringing gratitude into the workplace?
So I think that the key is consistency, right? So the risks are if you don't have consistency around gratitude. And we can think about consistency in two ways. The first way to think about consistency is in showing appreciation to other people. So as I mentioned on one of the later slides, you can actually get a lot of envy and a lot of anger if some people are getting appreciation, not others. In fact, I just finished a study in Pakistan with a large micro lending organization where everybody works in teams of about 5. And what we found is that the biggest predictor of sort of high functioning within that team as it relates to gratitude is actually the evenness of the gratitude that people receive. So when you get a lot of unevenness in the team where some people are receiving a lot of gratitude and others are not, that's when you start getting a lot of resentment. You start getting fault lines and fractures within the team, and that can be a problem. So we really want to make sure that we're consistent and even in the gratitude that we show other people. Related to that is this should be a part of a broader culture that emphasizes care and concern for employees. So gratitude can't take the place of treating your employees well. If you try to say, hey, let's all express gratitude to each other, but you have a culture where employees feel like they're being kind of dehumanized or taken advantage of or work too hard, then that's not going to work either. So you want to be consistent across people, and you want to be consistent with other practices within the organization that are about showing care and concern for your employees.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Go ahead, Juha.
All right, if that was all about the questions. So Ryan, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel almost a little bit nervous now because I am supposed to show gratitude to a gratitude expert. So am I gonna get it right, you know? So I'm just gonna say thank you, okay? That was a very inspirational speech, and I'm sure that many people are going to connect and start a thinking process based on everything you said. Really, really inspirational there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day, Ryan. So, ValoFest continues, and up next we have Heather Masters, who is a Microsoft 365 productivity solution coach, user adoption coach, specializing in Microsoft 365 collaboration and communication. I know Heather personally, and very, very excited about her session here. So, Heather, I hope you are with us. You can take it from here. There you go.
All right. Hello, everybody. How are you today?
Good, good. Yourself?
Doing well.
We can hear you and we can see you.
Fantastic. I'm going to share my screen here too. All right. So thank you for the introduction. I know that was a mouthful, but I'm Heather Masters from Catapult Systems. I'm a Microsoft 365 productivity and user adoption coach in our solutions delivery team. We're working on a shorter title. A little background on me. I've been working on intranet since before SharePoint. Early in my career, I was a database analyst and created Crystal reports. And we needed a place to deliver those reports. Users wanted to make changes to variables, needed a place to print them out. So we created a .NET intranet in around 2006 or so. And then we added more and more content and realized that, hey, this had become not just a delivery mechanism for reporting, but an intranet itself. And in 2008, I went and joined some friends in a startup company to deliver an intranet content that we use to deliver all internally as a service. So we built that service on SharePoint 2007, which was not easy because SharePoint 2007 was not a multi-tenant product. So we had to turn to some custom code, and the company that I worked for became a Catapult client. And when it was time to make a move, I knew that my next move had to be to work at Catapult Systems. So my job now is to focus on user adoption for our solutions as a service client. And I build metrics and roadmaps and work on making sure that our clients get the best user adoption possible with their solutions, whether they're using SharePoint or Teams, Yammer, Planner, Microsoft 365 groups, or anything in the productivity stack or modern workplace. And Catapult Systems is a proud premier partner with Valo. So I'm going to talk today about the driving digital workplace adoption with Valo. And I'll discuss what we measure, who we work with, and how we use Valo to deliver high user adoption. So when you build a fresh new Valo intranet, what are the top features that you want to implement? I've listed here the typical features. When we think of an intranet, these are some of the features that we prioritize in the implementation. We've got company news and department news. We've got knowledge management with work instructions and policies and procedures and FAQs, people information, org charts, expense reimbursement, and training. And our delivery process at Catapult is to build, measure, and iterate. So we start with this typical intranet list, and we make a minimum viable product, get it deployed, and then we work on the roadmap to implement other features and solutions after the initial intranet is delivered. So we begin measuring the user analytics on day one. And after a month, we have a baseline of analytics, but after 3 months, we have a good average to measure against. So a little intranet metrics vocabulary lesson here. A session starts at a page view and lasts up to 2 hours and times out with 30 minutes of inactivity. And a page view is just that. A user has gone to look at a page. So when we divide page views by sessions, we can determine how long the average user is spending on a site. And in this case, for this metric, it's 1.4 pages per session. We also see here visitors per day, which is a count of users on the site each day. And then the total users, which is a number of the monthly average of unique users. So these metrics tell us a story to track some important things. Are the employees using the intranet? Are they spending time on the intranet to find what they need? How long are they spending? And what's the most valuable content? So we have a set of key metrics that we follow, like average time on site, and we compare those across clients to understand how the engagement is going. The rest of the metrics we measure against the client's own baseline. So how many unique users do you have versus visitors a day? Is this the expected numbers of visitors that you have? How many frontline workers are in your organization? So these things provide us with a pulse of the overall activity on an intranet, and we can find metrics to improve on like pages per session. And if you want to navigate through the site to more than 2 pages per session, then let's make the content really engaging and utilize the universal web part, get some more meaningful content. And you can see in these metrics that we're looking at on the page, it's only 1.4 pages per session. So that's something that we might want to look at improving. Once we understand the overall metrics, we can get a deep dive into search and documents. The other thing you'll see here in the last 3 months average on the screen is we've got a 12-minute session 12 minutes in a session is a pretty good metric. Likely users are not just opening the home page and leaving the site. They're spending 12 minutes per session on the site. So they may be going directly to a followed site and skipping the home page, or they may be searching for content and going to the content they need. When we look at this 902 visitors per day out of 2,160 unique users, this leads to the question, is this our expectation? Are there users at the desks all day? Or are they driving? Are they on a manufacturing floor? If a large percentage of frontline workers are in an organization, then that 902 visitors per day might be a good number, something that is specific to the organization. So these page views and sessions are to that only make sense to measure against for this environment, month over month. If we want to understand what's most important to implement next, we look at our analytics, not just for clues about how users are engaging, but to find out what information they need and whether or not they're finding it. So if you're looking at additional metrics here, in my experience, tracking the metrics across clients, large and small, in multiple industries, search has become the most important feature, and the search reporting has been the most interesting reporting that everyone finds. It's not necessarily just the search results reporting, but the fact that the search page is kind of top 3 in most intranets. So it's a really high value page. Search is also the juiciest information that you'll find on an intranet. You'll see that one of our top searches, and this is for our Catapult intranet, is Moose Lodge. It's an employee vacation benefit that we're able to enter a lottery for. And we always look critically at search results to try to find the gems, like sometimes it'll be a person's name, and that's the name of a new barista in the coffee shop downstairs. So we might find some good things like that. We'll also find misspellings and opportunities to add synonyms to taxonomy. And people who mistake this Office 365 search bar for Google, but we almost never are bored with that information. It's high search results topics we think should be easy to find are not really a negative. So if you think that the topics you see that we get high search results on are something that people should be going to in Global Nav or seeing on a quick link, I think it's just that it's reinforcing that those are high value items. As humans, we're kind of accustomed to searching online and finding what we need, and we don't change that behavior when we get to the intranet. So search informs us about what content should be elevated to Global Nav and quick links. And search analytics are important not just for the insight into what people are searching for and finding, but also what they're searching for and not finding. You'll see in the graphic on the screen that I have some successful and unsuccessful search results. So is there content that users expect to see on the intranet that's missing? Or do they not have the right permissions to see that content? Is it expected in a different site? Do we need to cross-post a link to that content and quick links or in navigation so it's easier to find? Also, we often see searching for specific form numbers or process numbers in our search results. So that can show up in both successful and unsuccessful searches. Ensuring the users are searching for the right information in the right place or identifying the locations that they need to use organizational search might help with the success of the searches overall. So what are the top searches that I see? So across all clients, I look at this information all the time. And I noted the common searches from across multiple clients and multiple industries, and also the top documents that I see on a regular basis as being the most valuable information. This is great because looking at this, you can see all the Valo solutions that fall into place as you deliver this content. So users are definitely looking for time off information. How much time do they have? How can they request it? What types of time off are available, from vacation, holiday, sick, bereavement, voting, personal time, volunteering, quarantine. We see a lot of search terms for time off. Users also like to get paid. They're looking for the payroll calendar, link to pay stubs, bonus information. And also really high on the list is people information. So you'll see phone list and org chart right at the top of the results. This past year, we've had high search results for COVID-19 information, company policies, procedures, announcements, protocols, and back to work procedures. So people are looking for that COVID-19 information. They're looking for training and education information, retirement plan information. And then you'll see a lot of links to third-party tools in the search results, like Okta, Concur, Expensify, Oracle, UltiPro. Those tools might be something that that are not easily available on all sites. And then we'll see search terms for IT help desk, job aids, marketing, templates, and logos. So when you look at this list for what users are searching for, I see a lot of solutions at the other side. So in time off requests, that's probably something for the global nav or payroll information, global nav. As we look into the list of the results, we get a lot of good candidates for solutions. Payroll information may take you to a page with audience targeted information, or possibly a secured link if you're dealing with different locations or brands within a company that has different processes or needs. Phone list can be replaced with a people directory for sure, and the org chart web part would come in handy. We can also point to offsite links and my tools or our tools in the global nav. And in some cases, the content is so important, it may live both in the global navigation and quick links. Using search and Valo's web parts in the Valo intranet, we get to deliver all the information people are looking for, and we get to respond to their changing needs quickly to showcase new topics, or so that we can elevate the content we need at the time we need it. If we spin this around and look at the list of tools we use and envision where the content belongs, we might also see the need for audience targeting, for content relevant for certain departments and locations. Then we've also got the ability to have secure links in our global nav, and we can deliver those third-party tools and my tools and our tools. You can see the people finder would be a good replacement for the phone list. And for job aids and topic related information, we can use the universal web part and apply a template that meets our needs. So we've got all kinds of ways to surface the search results and take them into the intranet as an easy solution to get the content we need front and center. But it's not just about the content. So far, I focused on the content in the intranet. But there's another key component about driving adoption. It's the people themselves. We'd like to start off with a special project kickoff just for the content owners to kind of dangle all the great tools out there and let them know we can help them with the implementation. Content owners know their content best. They can provide the right content for the site. Each team has one, although it may not be a formal role or position, but we do like to involve the content owners from the very beginning at the implementation of the project. We can give them kind of an art of the possible, and they can make decisions about how they'd like to deliver their content on pages or in the apps. And we set their expectations early about what time we'll need from them. And then we're doing all this to groom them so they become our champions. I'm sure that you all know the importance of champions in your user adoption, but they'll help you scale the adoption efforts across the organization and be able to evangelize SharePoint and its value across the teams. And they're there to welcome new users and answer questions. And this is a metric that Microsoft uses. When you make those content owners your champions, your end users can learn from their peers, which is, according to Microsoft, the way that we learn the best. So it's one of the most effective and most used methods for learning in your company. Champions provide you with guidance and support to end users. They're not only passionate about their work, but also excited to help their peers and learn more effective solutions and create social motivation for others to jump on the bandwagon. They'll also inform colleagues to drive adoption and have the ability to gather and give feedback, create excitement, model those new ways of working. Organizations see a 20 to 25% boost in productivity when they give their champions a social community. Something that we like to do is giving the champions a shared collaboration space. So if possible, teams with a Valo Connect tab would allow them to socialize their successes and provide feedback to each other on what works. We also like to create a recurring meeting and have that space to collaborate with content owners together so we can iterate, share success, and repeat and optimize that user adoption with the organization. The champions are part of the larger stakeholder team, which also includes the executive sponsors. Sponsors are important because they can provide communications to all staff and supporting sponsors and leadership, act as a sponsor and face to the program, and use the technology to model how employees can use it, and provide success stories, which is something that is really valuable. An actively engaged executive sponsor is one of the top drivers of project success. Communication can come from the sponsors, and it's less likely to be ignored. And they can create calls to action for employees and highlight resources to support the transition. We like to use our metrics to measure and share success and then iterate. We inform the content owners and executive sponsors and allow them to refine their messaging and iterate to provide more information for the end users. What's most important here to get to is the why. So Microsoft, uses research from Forrester to provide the total cost of ownership information. And the research says that information workers save 4 hours per week from improved collaboration and information sharing. and having features like co-authoring and version control, searching documents, conversations, and names available in one place enables information workers to effectively and efficiently collaborate in real time. Also helps first-line workers to be able to find and share information, and it decreases time to decision from decision makers. There's also a lower attrition rate for workers, so less turnover, really good for the organization. Gives improves worker satisfaction and integration and empowerment. So all of that employee engagement is really helpful overall to the organization. And we like to say that informed employees are happy employees are more effective at their jobs. So that's why we like to get our metrics and measure, share success, iterate, and get the users exactly what they need. So I hope this is helpful and you have an understanding about how you can drive adoption and the value it has to your organization.
Thank you, Heather. It's always interesting to hear more from our partners and see how you drive adoption with your customers. I received several questions. I'm going to start with the first one. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. The first question is, how do I get started with user adoption?
So the first, let me stop sharing here. The first thing you can do is begin your analytics process. You've got to get a way to measure on your site. So you'll be able to create a baseline in about a month. In about 3 months, you'll be able to have some good knowledge about what you have on your site, how people are using it, and how you need to improve.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, what metrics should I look at to measure my user adoption?
We like to look at a lot of things, but the average time on site is a really good metric to know if your users are spending enough time to get out exactly what they need from the site. Then looking at the usership of the site. Are enough users engaged? Are they coming to the site for what they need? And then we also look at the content itself, what pages are getting the most hits and what's most interesting to the users.
Okay, thank you. And finally, last question. What is the best way to keep my content fresh post-launch?
So keeping those content owners engaged to add the content in the places that we've given them will allow those universal web parts to refresh their content for them. So as long as those content owners are engaged and keeping it fresh, then the intranet will be fresh.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. And maybe some carrot will help too, or some gratitude, as we learned from the
yes,
speaker.
gratitude would be good too.
Great. So happy to hear this speech. It was a great, really good presentation. So thank you very much, Heather. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for taking the time, and I wish you a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so let's then proceed to a brief product break, after which we are going to have a look at how we are going to put all of these inspiring ideas into practice. So stay tuned.
Without Valo Intranet, our website would be really boring. It would look like any other website, any other SharePoint, and that's not what we wanted. The New South Wales Department of Education works with 100,000 teachers across the state of New South Wales and about 800,000 students. We wanted teachers to be able to connect with each other, knowing that they were chatting in the social world, so Twitter, Facebook, Yammer. We didn't need to have that conversation piece within the library, but what we did want is the connection piece.
When the Department of Education asked us to help them to build the STEMshare library, we went on a bit of a journey with them to see what's possible within SharePoint, what are the limitations and the boundaries, and especially with such a large user base. Luckily, with our team of developers and people who work with it, we managed to find a way that has worked out really well for us.
Our main issues were solved with our Valo integration. So being able to create a mega menu and use the hub structure allowed us to just give more depth to the site. The different Valo features like the different site creation, the ability to create our own web search part allowed us to embed cards, turn it into a little bit of a boards and cards feel, and helped us to make SharePoint more visual. And the mega menu helped us to turn it into a safer user journey. So Valo helped us to turn SharePoint into a nice user experience.
We really love the Valo team. Their support is absolutely fantastic. We spent nights actually doing a project with them on Skype and in sessions to make sure that all the technology could be delivered in an appropriate way. They're very responsive, they're very engaged, so they also proactively check with us to make sure that technology is being delivered properly, that there's a high standard of quality that's being delivered to clients. Their engagement makes a difference in delivering projects on time and within budget.
The launch was a non-event. I woke up that morning and I was so excited because it's going live today, and we had everything ready, and we put our redirect on our old site to the new site and sat and waited, and nothing happened because it all just worked. Everything, the user experience was perfect. Our consultants who are out in the field were leading sessions. They're just like, people just accessed it. It just worked. And it was this new thing for them that all of a sudden they could say, I want to learn how to teach 3D printing to 4-year-olds. Boom, the resources come up for them. So that was really cool that we've been able to make that happen for teachers, and that's exactly what I wanted to see.
One of my favorite Valo features was that it really makes it easy for people to use the content, and the toolset that they deliver includes web parts, SharePoint framework web parts, so they're completely configurable.
It's just nice to be able to give teachers something that's been created for them. It's contemporary, it's simple, it's a beautiful user experience with Valo added, and it just makes STEM learning and a new thing easy for teachers to get a handle on and do their job well. SharePoint gurus were essential. I could not have done this project without them. So it was really great to go on a journey that involved all sorts of experimenting and prototyping, and just slowly and gradually make a product that we knew was going to answer user need. I loved working with them, and I can't wait to work with them again.
For decades, Special Olympics Canada has increased the benefits of a healthy and active lifestyle through sport. As sponsors, Valo Solutions and CryoSpark have combined our efforts to facilitate Special Olympics Canada's brand new digital workplace. We are dedicated to help bring together the staff, employees, and volunteers of the SOC to further support these incredible athletes. Special Olympics Canada, the inclusion movement, powered by sport.
Hello, Valo. My name.
All right. We are back live. Yes, Special Olympics. That story always puts a smile on my face. A great story. because being apart doesn't mean we cannot be together. All right, the show continues. I hope you are hearing me okay. Yes. You can stop sharing your screen. Thank you. All right, there you go. I will start sharing mine. So next we're gonna do some, in a way, some wrap up and start like digesting what we have seen and heard today, those inspirational speeches, and how we can actually take them to practice using our solutions. Okay. So for instance, the keynote speech was all about like the question how he started his speech was, you know, when are we going back to the office? And even though the speaker knew that we're going back to the office, but we don't actually know when. So there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we don't know how long that light is and how long that tunnel is, obviously. And so it's best, according to David Burkus, for instance, it's best to make yourselves comfortable the way you're working now, and in the best of cases, prepare for a hybrid future, hybrid working environment for the time being. And this is also what we hear a lot of our customers, a lot of companies doing nowadays. So one of our customers put it really nicely. They said that they have transformed from furnishing the physical workspace, so the office, the meeting rooms, buying furniture there. So they used to be doing that, but since early last year, what they're doing is they are furnishing the digital workplace. So the pages and tabs have replaced the chairs and doors and desks. So it was a lot about, you know, making it work internally and making it work virtually, and we have very good solutions for that. So the Microsoft solutions powered by Valo essentially make it easier. They do not make it automatic, but they make it easier for you to succeed, making your virtual and digital workplace make sense. So so you can start your working day just like you would be entering the office. You enter the digital workplace like here, and I'm sharing my screen and I hope it shows, where you can see what's up in the company. So you can see the news, you can see what else is going on. All right, there's a poll, I want to answer that. Oh, there are new employees here, let me check them out, let me wish them a warm welcome. Oh, what's happening in the marketing? Oh, all right, there's tweets going on. So this is how I will work and navigate in my, you know, virtual office. And it's all about like bringing clarity into it and bringing it all together so that the users don't get lost. So then you can see, all right, I need to talk to somebody from marketing, you know, so I just go to the organization tab like this, and I just filter by department, and I see, all right, so there's a marketing team, and I can just initiate a chat with anybody here and continue working like that. So I know it's not easy for companies to make the shift, and some have been successful with it and some less, but obviously the culture of, you know, offices and physically working together is hundreds, if not thousands of years old, while this digital shift is and transformation is still really new. And in Valo, we have actually a good overview of all of the main countries and markets in the world, and especially those areas and those regions where the digital transformation was not that mature and not that advanced. There was a huge leap happening during last year in terms of digital transformation. So anyway, so the user continues like that. They can also have a look at the org chart, you know, and they can find their colleagues like this. And if with a colleague they have they're discussing something and they say, you know what, let's set up a team for this. So I mean, they can book a room because it can be a hybrid working environment where you can also, you know, book meeting rooms. So your virtual digital workplace can have a tab for that as well. But your meeting room might actually be a virtual workplace. So there are very good tools in the Microsoft ecosystem for that, in the Microsoft offering. And so how Valo enables it and makes it easier is that we have the tools for creating and asking for that for that new virtual room. So let's say that with Annie we discussed, yeah, let's set up a little project here. So I would just go and, you know, create that project site. So it all happens virtually, and you just fill out a simple form where you say what this is going to be about, what the title is, and which users I want to invite there. And then you set the other dates, like other metadata like that, and then you just order the room, and then the office administrator, meaning the virtual digital workplace administrator, goes on and approves or rejects your order. So this is enabling, for instance, the huddles that David Burkus referred to in his speeches, and basically the virtual rooms. The other topic that was discussed very much during today is ideation and innovation. So, for instance, in the keynote, the psychological safety was all about the extent to which team members feel safe to express themselves and take risks. So it goes way beyond any technological tools, obviously, but you also have to have the technology supporting this culture. It's a cultural change. But sooner or later, the people are going to ask, okay, so we do have this organizational culture where I can submit ideas and I am going to be listened and the ideas are going to be nurtured. But where can I submit it? Shall I just, pick up the phone and call the CEO every time? Shall I send them an email? So you need to have a modern, good-looking, and well-working ideation tool that also supports the process and enables you as an end user to follow up on your ideas. And so you can see what happened to your ideas. So as a user, as part of this digital office that we have here, I enter the room called Ideas, and this is where it all happens. So I have already submitted quite a few ideas. And so as a user, I can now go and check out, see what's happening with my ideas. So many of the ideas are unfortunately still in a new stage, meaning that they haven't started processing them, but some are in progress. And the very cool thing about this is that just like Scott Berkun in his session about the myths of innovation explained that the innovation is not really an epiphany that happens to one person at one point of time, but it is actually the result of a process that started before and ended after that point in time. So then it's good to have an innovation tool that actually supports this epiphany, if you like, or this initial posting of the idea, but it also leverages the power of the crowd, the team, in nurturing the idea. So you can go and, after this idea has been submitted, so this one is about getting an office dog, which I totally love the idea. So after the initial posting of the idea, you can actually go and nurture the idea, meaning that people can have discussions, and you can imagine that in a multi-location environment where people are in different time zones, you don't even need a live meeting for this because the discussion is happening offline like this. So this is what you need. And as I said, the culture is important, and the top management sponsorship for this is obviously important. And also, as soon as you have this well-working ideation tool, what we've actually learned, what really makes it shine is the governance, obviously. So you need to have clear responsibilities because the ideas typically have different categories. So you can have, for instance, let me just choose one here. So then you can have, different categories, and by category, you can have different responsible people. So the important thing, and the important thing is that every idea gets managed. So there has to be a promise on the, like an SLA, like we are going to handle every new idea within this time frame. And so there are responsible people, probably by category, managing those ideas. So if this does not happen, and this is where the biggest frustration happens in ideation tools, is that all of my ideas are still in the new stage. Well, this is just an example environment, but you get the point. So So as an end user, I want to know, as an employee, I want to see that my ideas are actually being managed, because if they don't, I will, you know, lose my interest and stop using this tool. And as the ideation owner, obviously the benefits are great, because I can then see, you know, how like how these ideas are evolving here and what the best ideas are, what the most liked ideas are, for instance. So then I can see, then I can make decisions. All right, I still have a couple of minutes left. Excellent. So can a virtual culture thrive? This was Alysha Campbell's question, and how she started her presentation today. And she was also talking about how, like, what the formula is for a successful shift. You have to slow down to speed up. And one of the points Alysha made in her very great and inspirational speech was that don't overuse your tools, get creative. So definitely don't overuse your tools. Don't think that everybody understands, you know, technical terms like a complex metadata model or content types or site columns or anything like that. And also that kind of one of the typical pitfalls, especially in Microsoft environments, is that there are just too many tools. So there are too many tools to choose from, and people are supposed to understand so much of the technology. So it takes a lot of training, and somebody has to remove the complexity from technology. So all the technical terms you have to remove, especially when it comes to teamwork and collaboration. So you ask people, go on and create a new team site, and the next thing they come across in the Microsoft environment is like they have like 10 different options to choose from. They have planners, they have Teams, they have SharePoint, they have OneDrive. So a lot of tools to choose from, but what's the right tool for me? So we have to make sure that we give people the tools in a language that they understand. Meaning, for instance, when they create a new teamwork site here, they are not choosing from among, you know, different technical tools, but they are choosing from topics that they understand. Like, I'm a project manager, I need a new project, or I want a new steering group, or I'm a human resources person and now I need to onboard this new person. So obviously I'm going to create an HR onboarding site. Let's actually see how that works. So we need to give the users really simple tools to work with. In organizations, especially where you have hundreds or thousands of users, there's a huge variety in how people know technology. And there's no other way than serving for those who have the lowest understanding and the least technical knowledge. So not underestimating that. And so then we have to give them this very simple process of creating and managing the sites and collaborating in them. So I have chosen, I'm the human resources person now. I'm not a Microsoft expert, so I have chosen the onboarding template. And then I can easily understand what this means. I'm going to give it a title, description, the people I want to invite. And because this is an HR onboarding site, I would be then also specifying the manager and the mentor of this person, so that after this is done, I can just go and search, for instance, onboarding sites, and myself as a human resources person, I see this couple of sites and I can see what's going on in Peter's HR onboarding, and it is based on a template, this site here. So it's very straightforward. And again, the trick here is to remove the complexity and remove too many technical options and capabilities maybe that might confuse people. So you just, put here your predefined onboarding process, which happens to use Microsoft Planner in the background, but you don't need to know that as a human resources person. You just go here and you use the template and use the site as it was created. So and even though this is actually technically a SharePoint page here that's in the background, but the onboarded person just sees a very simple and understandable page with information. Okay, so that was a little overview on and our vision of how you can make life and work easier in this virtual office. And that actually concludes most of our program today. So up next, I'm wondering if we've received any questions, Oliver, during this session?
No recent questions received.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I will just stop my screen sharing. I hope everybody has enjoyed this event. For me and for us, at least, it has been some very, very inspirational speeches and inspirational sessions today. I also want to announce that today our raffle winner, our swag winner, is Rob Holmes. So congratulations to Rob Holmes. I'm going to use this applause effect here. No, I don't have the applause button. I'll just give an applause like this.
Just the real one.
So congrats to Rob Holmes. So Rob should send an email to marketing@valointernet.com and you will have your amazing Valo swag sent wherever you are.
Yoo-hoo.
Yoo-hoo. All right. Well, once again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. It was a pleasure for us. So stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.